Make a quick announcement about microphones. They're different in this room. There are some that are on all the time. So if you don't have the base with the green talk button, then yours is on. And I think that's Elsie, Robin, Dalton, Jenny, and Tammy is yours. Yeah, so just so you know. And then so on the breaks, I will mute them.
Thanks, Genevieve. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 9:33 a.m. on October 12th, 2022 for the Montana State Library Commission. And Genevieve, could you please go through the steps for how folks can join in online today?
For those of you online, when we get to public comment, if you could raise your hand in Zoom, and then we'll go down the list on calling you to speak. And the limit this is 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Genevieve. Could we do a roll call introduction starting with Commissioner Kerr?
Good morning, Commissioner Kristen Kerr, Helena, Montana.
Good morning, Jenny Stapp, your state librarian.
Good morning.
Will you pull yours all up close?
Commissioner Johnson, Missoula.
Good morning, Robin Scribner, Geraldine, Montana.
Morning, Tammy Hall from Bozeman, Montana.
Elsie Arnson, state superintendent. Good morning.
P. Taylor, Whitefish, Montana.
All right, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Jenny for staff recognitions.
Thank you, Dalton. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to share in a couple of staff longevity pins. This is a particularly special longevity announcement because we're recognizing two people who started working at the State Library on the very same day. And they are two of the kindest, most professional women I've ever had the opportunity to work with. I am first going to recognize Kara Orban, and then I'm going to ask Marilyn Bennett to recognize Erin Harris for 10 years of service with the State Library. Kara is our consortial coordinator at the State Library. She's responsible for helping us to administer our very successful Montana Shared Catalog, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. She's responsible for administering our ebook consortium, Montana Library to Go, the Courier program, our OCLC Group Services program. She's also responsible for helping us to be forward-looking in finding opportunities to help advance cooperative and collaborative library services in Montana. I can say that she is held in such high regard by her colleagues around the state and at the State Library. It is my absolute privilege to work with her. And Kara, thank you so much for your service and your commitment. And I do, but I feel like we are separated by this very strange table.
Erin Harris. Erin started at the State Library on September 10th, 2012 as a reader's advisor for the Montana Talking Book Services. She then moved to the position of Director of Recording and Volunteer Programs in May of 2014. She oversaw an average of 90 volunteers who gave an average of 6,300 volunteer hours per year. When COVID struck and we're no longer able to have volunteers in the building, Erin continued editing and uploading Montana recorded books onto the Braille and audio reading download website. As of today, there are over 800 Montana recorded books on the BARD website for patrons around the world to enjoy. Erin has been an invaluable member of the Montana Talking Book Services and always goes above and beyond for our patrons. And I'm honored to work with her.
And I have one more special recognition that I would like to make. Every year, the governor honors state employees for their excellent service through the Governor's Excellent Services Award. The process for recognizing agency employees is that agencies get to nominate their employees for the Governor's Award. And at the State Library, we ask our colleagues and peers to nominate staff to a committee that's made up of recent recipients of the Governor's Award. That process took place this summer. And I'm happy to announce that Tracy Cook is the State Library's recipient of the Governor's Award for Excellence this year. She was nominated for her efforts to successfully shepherd the process to update Montana's public library standards. And that award will be made by the governor next Monday on October 17th. So Tracy, congratulations.
Congratulations, Tracy, Kara, and Aaron. Are there any other remarks from members of the commission? All right, hearing none. Moving forward, next on our consent agenda is the approval of the minutes from August 3rd and the financial reports for Q4 fiscal year 22 and Q1 fiscal year 23. Would the commission like to hear these together or separately?
I'd like to make a comment about the meeting minutes.
Okay.
I wrote Jenny about this, but we had in the minutes that we had voted, we had all voted for the local recommendations from the subcommittee, but it didn't include those recommendations, which I think were an important part of what we voted for. I know that that is a really, we don't want to have the budget repeated in the minutes and all that, but I think that sometimes you have to be able to see in the minutes exactly what you voted for, especially with something like that. And so I don't know, I think it's a choice, a kind of a decision choice, but I had a hard time bringing those up. It was such an important part of that vote, was the actual subcommittee that we reviewed. So how can we avoid in the future that we don't have in the minutes what we actually voted for?
Can I speak? I know I go word for word what is said right before the vote. So instead the motion is, I go to the Zoom and write word for word. So I guess when that motion is stated, you just want to say exactly what is in it. I can go back and check the recording and make sure I didn't get that wrong, but that's usually my process is so,
I'm not saying you did anything.
yeah,
Mhm.
but so I will double check it and then just make sure when the motion stated that last time for the vote that it's.
I think for transparency, when we receive like a recommendation from a subcommittee, and we only have it in writing, but nobody in the public sees it or has it, and then we vote for it, there's a problem there with the public knowing what we just were voting on. And so I think that in order to have that transparency, we really need to have something like that we just voted on that's so important. A copy of it in the minutes so people can at least read it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. The staff will make note of that in future directions. Commissioner Kerr made a motion. Can I get a second? For the record, the motion was to adopt the August 3rd, 2022 meeting minutes and the financial reports.
I'll second it.
Moved by Commissioner Kerr. Is there any discussion or corrections from members of the commission? Is there any public comment? It is moved and seconded that the meeting minutes on August 3rd and financial reports from Q4 fiscal year 2022 and Q1 fiscal year 2023 be approved. Hearing no further comment, I will call for a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. The motion passes. I will now pass the floor to Tracy Cook to provide fiscal year 22 Federation reports.
Hello. So this is your October meeting where the Federation coordinators join us, and most of them are here today. Genevieve, is Lori Kennedy online? Okay, she needed to cover at her library, but she was going to try to join us online. So during the October meeting, this is where we present the annual reports for the federations, and you had that link in the memo that I sent you. I will give kind of the statewide highlights, and then each of the coordinators are just going to talk a little bit briefly about what's going on in their region, just to kind of give you a sense of what the libraries out there are experiencing and what they saw in the last year. So not surprisingly, because we've seen this in past years, a lot of the Federation funds are used on the statewide projects like the Montana Shared Catalog, Montana Library to Go, and OCLC. And then they also, of course, are used for continuing education and programming as well. I would say those are probably the top expenses, and then some other things that libraries do as well. When the coordinators talk, they'll talk a little bit about what they see in their own individual federations. One thing I guess I will let you know is that the coordinators, Pam, Rebecca, and I are kind of working on the reporting system for next year. The libraries gave us some really good feedback about what they would like to be able to see and report. And so we're going to try to simplify the process and then also make it easier for them and be able to collect the data that you want to see as well. And then finally, before I turn it over to the coordinators, I'm actually just going to give you a quick update on the Federation Task Force. So that task force is seated. We are meeting November 10th. Right now, we're in the process of attending each of the fall Federation meetings to ask attendees kind of what they value about federations, what's missing, what needs to be changed, and then just letting them know about the legislative intent and just kind of asking for their thoughts on whether or not they think the current structure meets that or if it should be changed or different. And so the task force, when they meet in November, we will talk about that feedback as well as the questions that the commission gave us earlier this year to kind of work through and begin to make recommendations. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to the coordinators. And Jonna, ready? All right.
Good morning, commissioners. It's lovely to be here today. Jenny, good morning. Jonna Underwood, and I am the library director for the Sheridan County Library in Plentywood. I always seem to say Montana after that, even though, yes, I am in Montana. Sometimes being in the northeast corner of the state, I feel a little bit like I have one foot in North Dakota and one foot in Canada. So sometimes it's useful to say, I'm still in Montana. And I am the Federation coordinator for the Golden Plains Library Federation. And just as a quick reminder, that would be Phillips County, Valley County, Daniels County, Roosevelt County, and then Sheridan County. So we've got 5 of us. We're a pretty small little federation, but yeah, we're small.
But a lot of land,
Pardon me?
a lot of land.
A lot of land
Yeah.
in between us. Yeah. We tend to meet in Wolf Point because it tends to be the most central location for us all to come together without having to drive for many hours. As Tracy indicated, most of the things that we spend our money on are the resource sharing and technology for things like Montana Library to Go, which is important. All our libraries utilize it. OCLC interlibrary loan is very important for those of us out with a lot of land. And then for programming, training, now that things have started to loosen up a little bit, we're able to travel a little bit. So getting to attend Library Association conferences and things like that are important to us as well. Yeah, that's about where we're at. Any questions?
I was lucky enough to attend by Zoom,
Yeah.
your conference or your federation, excuse me. Anyway, the librarians were wonderful. I could not believe the hours of travel that they have got to do just to get to, for training. So online training and I mean, online, everything is just so important for your federation. It's,
Yeah, that has been beneficial.
Yeah,
It's really nice
yes.
to meet in person,
yeah. Oh,
Very
I'm
nice.
sure. I'm sure.
but yeah.
Well, everyone was, it was fun to watch. It was fun. It was fun to see the interaction. It was, and the camaraderie. It was a very pleasant meeting to attend.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we've got a good group. Any other questions or comments?
Chair, if I could. Thank you. Welcome. You traveled long ways to get here. Question I'll probably ask all of you is the hotspot. When COVID hit and schools were not necessarily shuttered, they were closed for a little while till, Montana's resiliency then just ended up. But the hotspot program that was offered through the CARISA, the CARES money, that was beneficial. Did it help the 5 counties and the 5 different, I don't want to say long distances? Did that aid in the service for digital learning as well as patrons?
Yes, our hotspots were continually being checked out. We had teachers checking them out. We had families checking them out. It was really important during that very awkward time. And yes, it was very beneficial. Yep.
So one other question, if I could, then, should we continue? Should it be something that in rural Montana be an expectation?
Yes, it's a good program. Just because it does offer those that don't have internet an opportunity to at least have it, even if it's just temporarily. Everything is done, not everything, but almost everything is done on the internet, applying for a job, getting a driver's license. I mean, it is important. And there are those of us that don't have digital equity yet, where we're at. And, even in Sheridan County, you can drive 40 miles and still be in the county. But getting to the library, because the library is central, we just have the one library. If somebody out in the hinterlands needs internet, they can reserve one and use it. So yeah, it is important.
Thank you. And if I could direct this to Jenny, the state librarian, when it comes to the broadband efforts that congressional action in spring is going to give Montana either 300 million or 500 million, depending on the surveys and the requests from populations. I'm sure that the state library or the federation is at the table for this to make sure that we are equal across our state with this opportunity for digital learning or any kind of opportunity that the state library might offer. I know we as education were written into the congressional bill, so we're at the table, but I would hope that you also have nudged your way into this.
Are you encouraging a response to the broadband survey that was put out by the governor's office?
Yes, so there was the broadband survey that went out. I still need to get it onto my Facebook page. I've been a little lax. in
Right.
doing it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, if
It's
we can
just-
just encourage
it's just so
everyone
important.
to
Yeah.
get that filled out,
Yeah,
it's
it
just
is
so important.
terribly important.
Mhm.
Yes, I agree.
And just to answer the superintendent's questions, thanks for that, Superintendent. Libraries are one of the stakeholder groups in the education component that states are required to engage with. And I'm very proud to say that county commissioners and librarians were the only stakeholder groups represented at every single in-person meeting that the Department of Administration officials had around the state. So we are making sure that the role that libraries play in providing digital equity and digital literacy services are in front of those officials as they're doing their planning. We're encouraging the survey. There is also going to be a second round of statewide meetings that we'll encourage librarians to attend. Just this past Friday, we held a webinar for librarians that included some of the state officials continuing to educate librarians about the exact digital equity roles that the superintendent has raised. So thank you for raising that point.
Thank you. Travel safe.
All right, thank you.
So the next one up to speak is Valerie Frank. She's the coordinator of the Pathfinder Federation.
Thank you, Tracy. Good morning, Commission and Jenny. It's good to be here in person. As Tracy said, I am the Federation Coordinator for the Pathfinder, so we stretch from Glacier County on the west to Blaine County on the east and all the way down to Cascade County. So we have quite a bit of a land coverage. There are 15 libraries in our federation. If you look at the map of just the Pathfinder Federation, you will notice that there are only 14 libraries listed in the FY22 report. That is because we had one library that was ineligible for funding last year. I'm happy to report that they now are eligible to receive their funding in 2023.
Sorry, I haven't looked.
Okay, I apologize. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't. have my- It was a- Thank you.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just kind of soft spoken and I apologize for that. I thought I was projecting. Well, so, yeah, so we're thrilled that that library is eligible for this year. We do have one library in our federation that was eligible to receive funding, but they still have not received their funding because the state is withholding their money due to the issues in Glacier County. And with our libraries, the greatest amount spent is definitely on resource sharing technology. So OCLC and the shared catalog, interlibrary loans, and
Books.
I guess that's it. I think a big struggle for a lot of us is, still trying to get back to where we were prior to COVID. That's a struggle for a lot of us. So it's great to be in person at a meeting.
Yeah.
Any questions? Other than the hotspots? And I will say for my library, they were very slow to take off. They didn't circulate a lot. 20 miles to the east in Harlem, they could not keep those hotspots in, and they got extra hotspots. I think the difference there is that a lot of people in Chinook and the surrounding area have internet, as opposed to a lot of people in Chinook and in Harlem and the surrounding area. I will say that we are circulating them quite frequently now. And I will say that with most of our libraries, if that funding from the state library disappears, we won't be able to maintain those. But it is a good service for those people who need it. Anything else?
Valerie, I was just going to ask, sorry, this sounds really loud to me. You just mentioned, thanks for being here, by the way, today. You mentioned that your biggest challenge was getting back to pre-COVID. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
For our library, we are back to where we were and then some, because we increased our programs exponentially. But for a lot of the libraries, and even for our internal use and checkouts, people are just slow to come back in. Our internet use really never changed a lot because our Wi-Fi is always on, and we monitor that. So it's used around the clock. But that is not the case for a lot of the libraries in our federation.
Could you give me an idea of, and we have probably been told this, but how many hotspots usually are there per library?
I think it varies. We
Okay.
personally have 3 in our library.
Tracy could
I
tell us.
want to say Harlem has 5, but I'm
Okay.
not positive of that amount.
Okay,
So I couldn't tell you how many each library
Right.
has, but
Tracy probably can.
Tracy can.
Yeah.
I'll turn it over.
Tracy, the know-all, see y'all, right? Yes.
So the goal was one hotspot per 1,500 people.
Okay,
And then as we were going through the project, I think what Valerie brought up was an incredibly important point, is some places have better internet access than others.
yes.
And
yes.
so the libraries willingly, some of them gave up hotspots that weren't being
Oh,
used to
nice.
go to places where they don't have broadband internet access
Nice. Okay.
everywhere. So
Okay.
that's that. And then would you like me to answer your question a little bit, Commissioner Kara? Yeah. So what I have been hearing and visiting with the libraries is, not surprisingly, their circulation and visitation numbers went down during COVID. And so what they are finding is people are coming back, but they're a little slower to come back. And I think that's partially just they got out of the habit, the programs went down, but also a little bit, some people are still concerned for health reasons to come back. So libraries are starting to see an improvement. They're starting to offer more programming again and see people come through their doors. The other interesting thing they've mentioned is they're actually looking at their hours, because the way and the times that people use libraries has changed. And so many of them who had evening hours are actually finding those aren't being used. People are able to come in during the day as well. And then I think another interesting thing some of the libraries have mentioned is the movement to remote work, and remote workers actually seeking places to go to be around other people. So that's kind of a unique and
Interesting.
interesting thing.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So a representative from Sagebrush was not able to join us today. So the next person who will be speaking is Nancy Schmidt, who's the coordinator of South Central.
For whatever reason, I was thinking there was one ahead of me. Nancy Schmidt, as she said, the South Central Federation coordinator, and I am the director at the Laurel Public Library. And I have been in that position, I think, for 8 years now. It seems like no, it can't be that long. Well, I've been at my library a long time, so long enough to raise 2 kids anyway. So we have, let me read off my notes here, if that's okay. So we meet 2 times per year, and we travel around to different libraries pre-COVID. And now that we're back out, we're starting to move again. Our meeting in September, we met in Red Lodge, and it was the first time, honestly, I'd ever been in the Red Lodge Library. It was gorgeous. I really love the opportunity to go to libraries. It's just one of those geeky things about me. There are 18 libraries in my federation. One is currently not qualified for funding. They didn't quite meet the standards, but next year we're crossing our fingers and we're really giving that a good push and hoping that she can get on there. We cover 13 counties, going from Fergus down to the state line, Sweetgrass over to Rosebud. So that's why we travel our libraries around, because there's really no one central location for everybody. Not really. So, and as our funding, we received about $43,000 to split amongst all of us. And the majority of us use it for the OCLC, shared catalog, Montana Library to Go, Overdrive, MLA, Zoom. Some have used it for their summer reading programs, whether it's bringing in somebody to offer a programming or supplies that they want to use to offer out to their attendees. Community outreach, I know that Billings used theirs to help supply their bookmobile this year, which I guess was a significant thing for them. And then ILLs, I use it also to pay for my courier so that I'm sending books back and forth between my Federation libraries. Our biggest thing for us, we have the smallest library in the state, we have the largest library in the state. So we're really encompassing a vast different libraries. But we have about 300 book kits in our Federation that we share amongst all of the whole state, but the newer ones are given preferential treatment for the Federation. And then from there, we send them out. And my IT guy just came up with a Google sheet that everybody can go on there and see what we have. We're going to share that with the other libraries across the state, and they'll be able to just give us a call and say, hey, we want this book kit. I think at any given time, there's about 40 book kits that are out circulating around the state. And these are, 8 to 10 copies of every title that we have. And we just inherited 19 titles from Missoula. They got a big bunch of books, and 60 of them from Joliet Library had little other juvenile and young adult books that we inherited recently. So, you know, we're just enjoying sharing those, and it's a good thing we're on the courier. We could not afford to send those. We did spend over $600 on postage, mailing some of them out, but that's what. And as far as the hotspots, they're kind of a mixed bag in my federation. I mean, Billings obviously has the most around us, and they've had good luck with those. I think there's a little bit of the tweaking that needs to be done on how we handle those, because we're finding that some of our same patrons keep coming back. Most of Laurel is covered by internet, but there's a couple spots that you can't even get satellite out. You know, it just doesn't go down in those canyons like it needs to. And so, you know, we try to use them, but I think a little bit more handling on the local aspect rather than at the state level. Because when somebody keeps one too long, we have to call the state or email the state, and then we get it back. Then we email the state, and then it goes out, and then it's a circle, keeps happening the same way. But I think if we had a little handled differently, like at my library, where I could just go out and say, okay, Eli, you need to do this, he would do that. But that's at my library. Now, some of the other libraries, I was talking with, I think it was Joliet, and they said that they have no problem getting their hotspots back, and that's great. They filled a wonderful void when we could not have anybody meeting in our libraries. I'm open 100%. Probably more than I did. We tweaked our hours. As they said, we don't go quite as late in the evening, but we have more time on the weekend now. So, and our Wi-Fi is on till 10:30 at night, goes on at 6 in the morning. So you can do what you want. It's not always comfortable to sit out in your car. That's what we do as libraries. We did put a bench out there. You can sit on there all you want. But any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last coordinator is Abby Dooley with the Tamarack Federation.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. This is my first time in person at a commission meeting, so I'm excited to be back in Helena. Yes, I am the coordinator for the Tamarack Federation, so we cover all of Western Montana. We have 14 libraries. We do have one that is currently not eligible for funding. Most of the libraries in our federation have pretty much returned to our pre-COVID services. Some of our numbers are still slow to come back, as Tracy said, people just coming through the building. But we were able to meet in Missoula in person in April. We had a half day of training the day before the meeting. And one of those sessions was on crisis intervention. Our libraries have seen quite an uptick of people coming in with in some sort of crisis, whether it's homelessness, drug or alcohol addiction, mental health issues. And so some of our librarians have kind of felt like we had to put on this social worker hat. So this was actually a really great training for us. It was put on by a social worker and a police officer. And I know across the state, they're working to try and get these crisis response teams put together, which would be so beneficial for libraries really, and our communities in general. And they provided some really great tips for de-escalating situations and providing resources for these people and trying to find where the resources are. Some of the Federation Libraries concerns include library renovation or building funding and aging infrastructure. Wage and salary increases have been a big deal for us, corresponding funding for that, staffing shortages, updating technology and IT support. Montana has, or Western Montana has seen a huge increase in population. In Lake County, where I'm at, in Polson, we have, I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but in the thousands of people that have moved here from when COVID started until now. And Flathead County is just growing like crazy. And so that has certainly been a challenge for all of our libraries to be able to keep up with the number of new people coming in.
But we also share our joys, not just our concerns. And so some of our Federation Libraries joys included adding a lot of new library services and programs. COVID was a benefit for that. I think we all had to be a little more creative in our programming. And so we've been able to continue a lot of that going forward. Summer reading programs made a big return this year. I know at my library, we had ours in person. It was a full program and we had a great turnout for that. And libraries are working on capital improvements and some are doing full renovations. And then several of our libraries were able to take advantage of the new cabling and equipment for IT through the ARPA funds. And then our hotspot programs are still going strong. I would say about the hotspot programs for us, we sit on the Indian reservation. And so we actually have a lot of students from Salish Kootenai College that utilize our hotspots. If it's something that's going to continue, I think for us, we need more. We have about 10. They are constantly gone. We call the cabinet where we usually keep them the cabinet of disappointment, because every time somebody comes to the desk and asks, we're like, well, we'll check. There's never a hotspot. And so I think if it's something to continue, more would be wonderful. I don't think it's something that it would be a challenge for us to be able to pay for that many in a year. Especially, and I think like as Nancy said, it's kind of the same people that use the hotspots over and over. And so there is a little bit of a monopoly that happens with that, although there is the hold system. And so it's still fair. But I think I had the opportunity to go to Kalispell and meet with the folks from Washington, DC about the broadband money. And we really encourage them to try to, I mean, it would be wonderful if internet became like your normal utilities and was affordable. In our area, internet ranges from about $75 up to $150 a month. So affordable internet for all would be wonderful. But the hotspots are great, especially for travel. We have people that need it when they're traveling on the road to be able to work on homework, or we've had a teacher at SKC use it while she's traveling to be able to work with her students on Zoom. So it definitely has its benefits. And for our federation for FY22, again, most of our money was spent on the Montana Shared Catalog, OCLC, and Montana Library to Go. Our interlibrary loan costs were high on the list, as well as technology and electronic resources. Only 3 of the 14 libraries in my federation are not part of the MSC. And only 1 of those is not part of partners. So 10 of the 14 libraries in our federation are part of the partners sharing group, which is also on the courier system and shares across the whole state. Most of our libraries have spent their funds on their MSC subscriptions or that courier service. So if we could get those services paid for on a statewide basis to allow everybody in the state to experience the joy of partners and sharing all of our materials, that would be wonderful and would really free up our federation funds for some new and innovative services and programs. We are having our fall meeting next Thursday on Zoom. And then we do plan to meet again in Missoula in April. So thank you so much for supporting libraries. We really appreciate the funding. Any questions? Thank you.
Genevieve let me know that Lori Kennedy, who's the coordinator of the Broad Valleys Federation, is able to join us online. So Lori, if you want to unmute your mic and present to the commission.
Hi, this is Lori from Dillon. So sorry I could not be there today. I have one employee with a death in the family and the other one is out with bronchitis. So I get to wear many hats this week. Our Federation money, the majority of it was spent on the shared catalog, courier, IT services, and programming. Our Federation actually has a retreat and we meet annually at our retreat for different programming and workshops. And so the money that was left over from that we did not spend, we actually sent to the courier, and we ended up getting 2 other libraries to be on the courier service with that funding. let's see, our hotspot program. We always have holds. I know that a lot of my libraries, I believe Bozeman has like 40 hotspots or something like that. But there's hold lists all the time for our hotspots. In Dillon, it's a little tricky just because of cell service coverage. So wherever you do not get cell service coverage, you will not be able to use the hotspot. But I do know I've had people use them to travel, to do their work. And our college students up here, actually the college has hotspots, but they don't have enough. And a lot of the college students come down and check out our hotspots as well to do homework at home when the libraries are closed. Let's see. Do you have any other questions for me? Oh, I have 21 libraries in my federation, and we go from West Yellowstone all the way to Drummond and from Helena down to Dillon.
I'm sorry, I don't have a question for Lori. I have a comment for everything's.
Okay.
So from what it sounds like to me is libraries need more hotspots and they need more money towards courier services. That is exactly what is there any other specific item that you feel, courier service, wow, from one end of the state almost to the other, it's crazy.
I can tell you with our courier service, it's great. We're able, because with interlibrary loans, our funding is very short. And so with our courier service, being able to use that, it has helped our patrons a lot. We no longer have to charge our patrons the mailing costs of books. So the courier is great. The more that we can get on there, the better it is. And the other funding thing that I would suggest would be like the building funding and infrastructure repairs and things like that. We are a Carnegie building, for example, and on the National Registry. So to make any changes or any updates, it's quite the task. But I know that there's quite a few libraries within my federation that need infrastructure help. So anything is great and everything is great.
That makes sense.
I would just like to make one comment about the courier system. That is something that we have struggled along the High Line, and I know that that's the case with John's federation as well. There just isn't a reliable courier for us, so we don't, along the High Line, we're not able to utilize the courier service. So
would you, if you could find a reliable courier?
if we could find a reliable courier, yeah.
Okay.
I think
Maybe.
it would be
Jonna?
something we would look
Okay.
at for sure. And the cost.
The cost.
And
Please
that's how it is.
Speak
for
into the
us.
mic.
Okay, so it's cheaper for Jonna to mail. Really? I can't believe it. Really? Oh my goodness, because
And
mailing
that's-
anything is outrageous. So, but it is cheaper.
And it is
Okay.
cheaper for us.
For you
too, and We
also.
do a lot of interlibrary loans at our.
Okay,
library.
and you
Not
mail them.
borrows, but we.
Do you have enough funding for mailing?
Currently, yes, I do.
Okay. Jonna, do you have enough? Yes, you do. Okay. She said yes.
Thanks, Robin.
Yes.
I just wanted to take a moment to remind the commission that one of the budget requests that we submitted to the budget office at the direction of the commission during the executive planning process includes funding for both the hotspot program and significantly more funding for the courier.
Right.
We know that the Highline area is an area of the state that is just completely unserved, and funding would allow us to hopefully find solutions to the challenges that these libraries are facing. With regard to cost, information was shared recently by a member of the Imagine If Library during one of the Montana Library Association roadshows that the cost to send a single book through the courier for them is about 11 cents compared to I think it's upwards of $4 per item in the mail. So
Oh, my goodness.
that's an opportunity that the libraries along the High Line are not able to take advantage of because of, as Val said, there just simply isn't a reliable, affordable option available to them. So one of the reasons why that's such a significant component of the ask that.
Okay, can you
this-
explain the courier? Is it a person? Is it is it a business?
It is
business.
a business. Air Cartage. Is that?
Good morning.
Good morning, Kara. Congratulations.
Thank you. So Montana Air Cartage is the service provider that we have a contract with for courier service, and they serve 55 drop sites through about 19 hubs throughout Montana, mostly along I-90 and then up the corridor going up the Bitterroot to Kalispell and Whitefish. And there are some volunteer spurs that go to Libby and through the Madison Valley and some other areas. Of course, there is Central Montana and the High Line that are we're unable to serve currently with our budget restrictions and also some gaps in courier service. So the cost of a stop with Montana Air is $25 per stop, and that includes up to 5 crates. And you can fill a crate with about 30 items, depending on the size of the item, of course. And so for libraries that are in the sharing group that which Abby referred to, partner sharing group, they treat each other basically like branches. You can just place a hold in the catalog and that item will come to your library. It's pretty seamless. You don't have to fill out an interlibrary loan request. So they place a hold, that library puts the item in the crate and it comes to your library in hopefully a few days. In Eastern Montana, it takes quite a bit longer, and that's an equity issue that we still would like to address with hopefully additional courier funding. So the more items you're going to put in a crate, obviously the greater the value. For libraries that are not in a sharing group or that are just simply sending out a lower volume, they are not seeing, you'd have to send out at least 2 or 3 books in a crate to make it a better cost value than to send it in the mail, which would include the cost of packaging. And so for the libraries that are not on the courier right now, they're not sending as much interlibrary loan. They would have the opportunity to expand their resource sharing if they at a greater cost value if they run. Did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Kara. So the High Line not only doesn't have great internet, but they also don't have a great courier service. Isn't it good? Oh, good.
In Chinook, we have excellent internet.
Oh,
service.
wonderful.
Triangle did
Excellent, but
Wi-Fi
Excellent internet.
okay.
way before other areas. So we have.
You
had-
have excellent,
We have excellent.
all of your libraries, all of your,
Well, all of them that are served by Triangle.
okay.
I don't know about Havre, quite honestly, because they do not have fiber
Okay.
in the city of
And,
Triangle, in the
yeah,
city of Havre.
Okay, and I can say Geraldine does not have fiber yet from Triangle.
But,
We are
yeah.
getting it.
Well,
in-
it's,
Yeah,
it's
it is
really
on
good.
the way.
And once Spectrum came in to the area, our internet and phone
Improved,
improved immensely because then there was competition.
right?
So-
Okay,
We do have really good internet.
okay.
Tracy, who are the majority of users would you classify for the courier service? Are they,
Oh, yeah, I was actually going to say that, Commissioner Hall. I'm glad you asked that question. Is one of the things is Montanans love partners in the courier because for them, like I'm super excited because Great Falls is going to go on partners at the beginning of the new year. And I love my library, but I'm going to now have access to like almost 1 million items instead of just what's in the Great Falls Public Library. And all I have to do is put a hold on it and it's going to come through the courier in a couple of days instead of having to wait. And so patrons are the ones who use it. And when they find out about it, they're pretty excited and they get in the habit of going online and placing their holds on their items and then the items show up.
But would you say it's students or would you say it's kids?
Or college or?
I think it's all ages, but I'm gonna look to Abby as kind of one of the, she's a leader in partners.
It's everyone. Our seniors love it. Kids love it. I mean, really all ages, no one in particular. And like Tracy said, the biggest benefit is that we just share everything. So, you know, for libraries that don't have as much funding to buy books, you know, they can still get the newest bestseller for their patron within a few weeks, if there isn't a huge hold.
And then you get a certain amount of money and you can use it for a courier service or you can use it for mailing if you can't get a courier. Is that how it works?
No, I'm not exactly sure how the funding works on the courier side. We pay,
For the mailing?
right. No, well, we don't pay for mailing. We are on the courier.
Okay.
Of course, in Western Montana, the whole Highway 93 corridor is pretty easy for that service. And we do have a few libraries like Lincoln County, they have to come to Kalispell to get their books because the courier isn't there. But yeah, we pay, I think we're paying, it's like $22.50 or $25 a stop. And then if there's over 5 crates, we pay an extra over that. But like for our library, we've chosen to go 5 days a week. So we get deliveries and send things out 5 days a week. Some are about 3 days a week, just depending on how much they can afford and how much volume they actually have. But it's pretty quick. And for us, I mean, we have Kalispell and Missoula in our we're right in between the two. So we get things very quickly. But it is true if we do request something from, say, Miles City, or from Laurel's a little quicker, I think, but it can take a little while longer. So there is that. But
let me ask maybe Tracy then. Tracy, would it be advantageous if the courier money, if an area did not have availability for a courier, would it be advantageous if they have the right to use some of that money for mailing?
They do actually.
Okay.
Yeah, if you look at the difference, like Golden Plains, so up there in the northeastern corner, they are one where I see postage for interlibrary loans. So they're actually paying the postal service and mailing items because that's what works for them because they don't have a
Yes,
courier.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Even if mailing isn't ideal, if it's their choice, the only choice, then it is available to them.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, Montana's big. I think that will be
Yeah,
where we'll go
that's-
for a long time.
Well, and everybody's suffering with not getting employees, so there will be areas where you won't get employees.
Yeah, that's true.
Tracy, can I say something?
Please go.
So our courier service, when I first started, I did a study to find out because we were spending quite a bit of money and my city council wanted me to check my budget. And so when I figured out our courier services, we spend about 80 cents a book. We're sending out about 150 books a month to different places, and we're getting from other places about the same. So it's really interesting. We spend anywhere between $100 and $175 a month on the courier, depending on how many times they stop for us. And my patrons are so excited about the courier, and we teach them how to get online so they can place their books on hold. And now that we have more partners coming in and we can send more books out, like Great Falls, we'll send them through the courier, which is great. Then, and our book club kits for our book club, they are all sent through the courier, which saves a ton of money because you're looking at 10 books just for a kit. So the courier is definitely necessary.
Sounds like it.
So thank you for the great discussion. That actually concludes the Federation reports, and the coordinators and I are just hoping you will approve this year's annual reports. Thank you.
Thank you, and you do a phenomenal job.
Thanks, Tracy, and thank you, Tracy, and thanks to you, those of you who drove all this way to speak with us today. Thank you.
If I could, I believe there might be another comment that might need to be made, or were you just standing to stretch? Yes. Yes. Just wanted your voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Is there a motion to accept the FY 22 Federation reports as presented?
I so move.
I second.
Moved by Commissioner Hall. Is there any discussion or corrections from the members of the commission? Is there any public comment? It is moved and seconds to accept the FY 22 Federation's reports as presented. Hearing no further comment, I call for a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
I wish we could give you lots more money for all of it.
Chairman Johnson, may we please have a 5-minute recess before we go into the next topic of the logo?
Yes.
It is a
Unmuted.
No. Oh, yes, go. So I can have a look into my.
Stay here.
Okay, the meeting is back in session. Next on our agenda is a report from the rebrand subcommittee. Commissioner Kerr, does the subcommittee have a report to share today?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Johnson. Sorry, I'm getting used to that. Our subcommittee met on, I believe, September 1st to review the 2 additional proposed logo colors from Hoffman York. And after discussion, we came to the conclusion that the logo that we shared with the commission, I believe, last week and also recently, out of the 2, and I don't know if you can share this, Genevieve, on that's the original logo that we have up right now, but the 2 additional ones. Thank you. This additional one was the one the subcommittee will be recommending to the commission to approve today. And the thought process behind that was we went through in great detail the colors and the tie-in to the Montana state flag. And we were excited that there was a correlation. Even the red that you see on the updated logo was originally just a little bit darker, and it almost looked brown to us. So Hoffman York went back and just edited that red that you see right there on that updated logo to what you see today, which I believe beautifully complements our state flag, and there's meaning now behind those colors, and it was a vibrant choice. The other logo had a darker green. I believe it was shared in our additional references for today. It was a darker green. It was more reflective of the evergreens. And then the yellow, I believe, was more of an orangish color. So we felt like this was representative of what the staff also was trying to convey through the PRISM objective that they were going after. And we unanimously as a subcommittee decided that this was the logo we would like to present to the commission. So I'm going to make a motion right now that the commission accept the proposed logo that we have for you today, and you can see up on the screen. And this is just for the approval of this logo only.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Moved by Commissioner Kerr. Is there any discussion or corrections from the member of the commission?
If I could you please share who was in the subcommittee and who then was responsible for this, and I applaud that you all got together. That was a request that I had
Mhm.
to just try to see where the conversations could lie.
Thank you, Superintendent Arnson. In the subcommittee, it was Dalton, Johnson, Peggy, and myself.
Thank you. If I could further then, were staff involved in any of the vote or the discussion?
They were involved in the discussion, and Jenny was with us, and I believe Evan. Evan, sorry. I don't believe Melissa was there. Okay, you were there the September 1st. Yes, okay. Help me if I'm missing someone.
And Genevieve.
And Genevieve, yes, I'm sorry. So we did discuss the commissioners, and we did involve the staff in our discussion. We took to light what they had to say as well.
Thank you. And I think that's one of the purposes as well, is to make sure that the commission and the staff move forward together. And I believe, Jenny, under your leadership, and also Dalton with yours, then how the agendas can be created. But it is indeed the commission then that does the final vote on things. But we must embrace what staff views, but it needs to be a summative vote from the commission.
I'd like to clarify again what your last comment was. Is that part of the motion that this is not an approval of any money?
There is no money involved in the approval of this logo. It is just a motion purely to approve this updated logo.
And so the rollout, if this passes, then the rollout money would be on the agenda the next time. Is that right, Jenny?
So Commissioner Hall, as it stands, we've already approved the funding. The funding questions that you're asking would require us to make another motion outside of the logo.
We did not approve the funding, this commission.
The commission approved the funding a year ago.
They approved the funding. They did not, they approved to seek a logo and do the study. They did not approve the rollout money. This
Mr. Chair.
commission needs to review that money.
Mr. Chair, if I may, on the December meeting in 2020, the commission unanimously approved a motion to carry forward with a rebranding that included funding for all of the media and marketing component of the rebrand. So in your meeting materials for this meeting is an update on the rebrand rollout. It shows the point in time that we're at right now in including the logo adoption, but there is a full timeline for the rollout and marketing of the rebrand that was approved by this commission in December of 2020. So that funding is approved.
I need to have an understanding that if that money is unspent, that this commission here is obligated to spend that money. I don't believe that a commission from 2020 can obligate us on money that's not been spent yet. I'm having a hard time with that.
Commissioner Hall, it's already been approved, that fund. We can go back and modify that with a separate motion, but that has nothing to do with this motion that's on the table.
Right, on the table now. And that's made clear, but I want to make sure that it's understood by everybody here and staff that we are not with this logo approving the rollout funding that's left. That will be a different decision.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Hall, again, that decision has been made. It is within the right of this commission to make a motion to rescind that funding and direct staff to cancel an existing contract. But that funding has been approved, and absent any further action, we have a contract, we have a plan to carry forward with the rollout.
That was the question at our last meeting. We directed to know that there has been about 160,000 spent on this logo, but there remains 130,000 for the rollout. And we were, many of us, commenting that that is not an acceptable use of money right now, especially before the legislature, et cetera. So I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing Kirsten, who worked really hard on this, and I really appreciate her efforts. I just think she represents a very open-minded stand to have been assigned by one of the yes votes. There were only 3 to sit on a committee with the other 2 yes votes and the 4 staff who proposed it. So I think that that was a really heavy load and I thank you for that. But she's saying, no, this does not include the money, but I hear Jenny saying, yes, it does. I really believe that has to be clarified before the vote takes place today. That is a very, very significant difference of opinion.
So I'd like to respect decorum and call back to order that the motion on the table is only for the logo. It was motioned by Commissioner Kerr, seconded by Commissioner Taylor. We asked for comment from the commission on accepting the logo.
Thank you for that. If I could then also add, just to put this into perspective, when this occurred in 2020 as a unanimous vote, I want to make sure then that any action can be unwound.
Yeah.
So the dollars that have been spent toward a private company that was engaged with the state library and the commission at this point has been expended. Those dollars cannot be
Right.
clawed back. But moving forward would require a majority vote, simple majority vote of the commission to know what we could do with those dollars. And I believe, Chair, you had an opportunity to talk about a pause or moving forward. I know I have visited with the state librarian regarding more understanding with what does this mean to educate the commission as well as rest of Montana in the duties and obligations of the state library. We heard from the librarians today in the Federation, but there are many more patrons that serve that use the services of the state library that I believe we can enrich ourselves with, not to jump into this quickly, but to really understand what the direction of a rebrand will be. It has been 2 decades, I believe, since an opportunity has existed. And I believe that it is extremely important for us as a commission to really recognize the strength of the library, the state library, and the dollars that are given to the state library federally as well as through the state general fund to embrace this branding and not just have it be a vote. But I believe it's more of an educational process moving forward, not to delay, but to really embody what that logo might mean, not just in a cost value, but in a value of increasing the services to Montana.
Thank you, Superintendent. I encourage you to make a motion once this motion is off the table. Moving forward, is there any other discussion amongst the commission?
I have a comment about this logo today. I printed up what I'm going to state for each of the members and one for Genevieve for the record. There you go. Would you pass that to Kristen and to Genevieve, and I appreciate that. Okay, I don't think I saved myself one. I will read yours. I think I had an extra. I'd like to point out, because it was not in our minutes, the recommendation from the subcommittee to the commission regarding the rebranding, which we passed in August 3rd. And I don't feel the need to read all of this, but the first one is that the correspondence between librarian Jenny Stapp and the director, that it's not necessary at this time to have consistency with the whole State Department, all the states. The second one says the subcommittee agreed that the proposed shape and prism concept will remain intact and asked Hoffman York to provide 2 additional color palettes, updating the prism rays, which can come from an array of natural colors found in nature across Montana. And I feel like the committee, I agree with you. In number 2, I think they did a phenomenal job. I think it is beautiful representing Montana. Now, number 3 stands separate from number 2, or it would be a continuation.
Okay, the fact that it is a number 3 means that it is not part of number 2. It stands separate. This is how I read it and how many members read it. The subcommittee is recommending to the commission that Hoffman York will, at no additional cost, present 2 alternative logos to the subcommittee for review. In total, 3 separate color arrays will be available, meaning that whatever other logo they brought us would have different colors, not because I requested at the time that one of those colors be just a solid blue and white or black and white. If alternative logos are completed, the subcommittee intends to place the logo on the agenda for the October commission meeting at the latest at the December commission meeting. Now, I may have been the only one who read this totally different, but when I know as a technical writer and a teacher of that at the University, at Montana State, what a mistake to make, at Montana State, that when you separate out 2 different things to 2 and 3, they're 2 different items. So 2 was very clear and is fulfilled here, that you brought back the prism exactly as it was with different colors with Nature Across Montana. I do not feel that number 3 was followed at all with 2 alternative logos that could include the prism or whatever, but also with very, different arrays of color, and I asked for one. So if that misunderstanding was mine, but I did explain that at the last meeting. So I just wanted to explain why we'll be voting no tomorrow today, because my concern is that there seems to be people who misjudge what we say up here. So I think we're becoming very cautious of what we say. So, I'm talking about the media, et cetera. So I wrote, whereas the logo does not reflect library, whereas any logo that has to be explained is not a good logo, whereas the printing cost for full color logo does not represent good stewardship of the public's money, and whereas the commissioner voted 4-3 to reject the original logo, and whereas the new logo is almost identical to the rejected logo with slight changes in hues of the original, I would like to vote against the recycled logo being presented to us today. So I would like that explanation, Genevieve, to be clear, okay, in the minutes. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion amongst the commission? Is there any Robin?
Okay, I was under the impression that we would get a blue scale and possibly a gray scale. That was my impression also.
It was a directive that we made at the last meeting. Kirsten, you're on Zoom with us, but I think you heard that too, but there were several of us who said we wanted a gray scale or a blue scale as one of the 3 options.
And in response to that, during the subcommittee meeting, with discussion along with the library staff, it was determined that they could not get behind a monochromatic logo because it did not reflect what their intention was in the first place. And so our subcommittee moved on to continue with color in the logo. And that's what we received from Hoffman and York.
I understand that, but I think it needs to be made clear in the record that I understand Hoffman York and many of the staff being married to this logo. And I appreciate it. And I see after hearing from all the members of the staff in the public meeting what their joy about it is. But we defeated it. This commission defeated it 4-3. And I can't even tell you how sad and disappointed I was to see that this vote of 4-3 was being, I guess I'd say, a switch and bait and switch, or, it just felt like a slap in the face to say, well, you defeated it 4-3, so we'll change a couple of hues and we'll bring it back again and wear you down. We voted as a appointed commission 4-3. And then in a respect of the staff, we said, okay, we'll look at another one and bring us 2 different patterns with or without the prism, bring us back this, which you did, and bring us one with just colors. And
I just take this very seriously, this waste of money, which I view this as not very good stewardship of our money. I know that people say, oh, $290,000, that's just a drop in the bucket with our big budget, but you know, I also sit on the Montana Disability Council, and we have a grant from the federal for the help the disabled in Montana, and that whole grant is 500,000. And we only have 300 and some thousand to spend on trying to help people. We approve generators so families don't lose power in the middle of the night and their kids die from being on air. We've approved ramps. We've approved moving clients out of moldy homes and helping them. We're doing these things and then I see that we think this is not a lot of money. We defeated this, and to just recycle it, I don't know, maybe it's a game to some people, but this to me is very serious spending of the public's money. So I look forward to being able to say it in the future, because we are not bound by a former spending of a board. That is just the way it is. We are not bound by what they did 5-10 years ago for spending. And so I look forward to having a chance to maybe put that money, the roll-up money, if this passes, into a use that could help with really important things like courier service and ramps to help disabled people get into the library. Okay, that's my say.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. I encourage commissioners, as you move forward with your votes, to think about what we are communicating to the staff and to the public in the words we're using and in our actions. I truly believe the intent of the subcommittee was to take the directive of the charge sent forth by the past chair, Kenny. And I truly feel that they fulfilled their obligation with what they brought forward today.
May I respond to Tammy's comment?
you.
And that is, Tammy, I really feel proud about the colors and the purpose behind the colors now on this logo, because they have meaning and they're not just this arbitrary color palette that was going into it. There needed to be some purpose behind color for me. I'm really proud of what our subcommittee did, and I think we did meet the agenda and the objectives of what was tasked for us. I am not proud of how much money was spent to get there. Just for the record, if we have spent this amount of money, I know it's not taxpayer dollar, but it has been gifted money, and money is money. And it makes me sad to see that mid $100,000, which is a very good earning for a yearly income, was spent to come up with this logo. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if we've not done anything with that money except for come up with this logo, that saddens me.
If I could, Mr. Chair, when it comes to the parliamentary procedures of what we have, I believe, a motion right now to accept the subcommittees. And I believe then if that motion is not accepted, to accept the subcommittee's vote, then there is that option of, if I can understand, there is a gradient option of a black and white that could easily be adopted to a blue or to any other color. Or you could segregate the motion to just accept not the colors, but the option of the, how do I want to say, the geometric shape of this at this point. So I believe if I'm correct, then we have a motion upon us to accept the subcommittee's recommendation with the colors that we see at this point. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. And I agree with you. As I said, I think when it comes to point 2 of the 3, this is a really nice representation of that. I just feel like number 3 was ignored. Do you want to call for anybody else, action? Question?
Is there any public comment?
Jennifer Bonnell on Zoom has public comment.
Hi, this is Jennifer. I am the director of the Montana Memory Project, and I I'm hearing Ms. Hall's argument about the funding, and I understand, but I also want to point out that we have put a lot of thought about how we want to use funding in a direction that makes sense for us. And I wanted to share with you so that you understand that my project has been put on hold in making changes that are vital for our growth and our improvement of the Montana Memory Project. And one of those things is I can't redesign my website in good conscience until I can do it once. And in order to do it once, I'm waiting on a logo and the color scheme to be adopted so that I can move forward with that redesign and the expense of that redesign. Another thing is I haven't had updated business cards to hand out for 6 months now. My phone number changed because we lowered costs at the State Library by going to a different phone system. When we migrated the Montana Memory Project to a new platform, my URL changed. And so my business card is out of date, plus I have very few left. And I've been waiting to make an order because I don't want to expend the funds until it's going to be accurate. I have had no outreach materials to give out this last year, and I travel extensively across the state as part of my job to do outreach and to encourage museums and libraries to contribute content. So I know the vote here is on the color of this logo. My hope is that you will move forward so that we can move forward as a state library. We've put a lot of programs in kind of limbo, waiting for a decision to be made, as well as simple things like business cards so that we can do our jobs effectively across the state. So I just wanted to share that because I feel frustrated that I'm being held down over a decision that seems the commission voted for the spending of the money 2 years ago, and now we're backtracking because we have different members on the commission, and it's very frustrating as a staff member to not be able to move forward with my work as a result.
Public comment from Addie Palin. Addie, are you there?
Oh, sorry, I was double muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Addie Palin, General Manager of Hoffman York, Montana, the agency who was responsible for this logo. And I just wanted to provide a few points of clarification regarding the investment of the budget as well as the deliverables. And I think it's important to note that part of the investment of the library's budget was soliciting input from staff, from the commission, from members of the government, as well as the community, in order to secure buy-in, to hear multiple perspectives, and deliver something that we felt really reflected all of those inputs that we heard. And this aligns with our philosophy as an agency of not just doing creative for creative sake. Nothing about this was arbitrary. And as you know, there were a few critical findings that informed where we arrived in terms of the look of this logo. One, obviously, there was a lot of resonance for the prism as an expression of transformation, the ability to transform information into knowledge and distribute it in a clarified way. For the strength of the hexagon shape, inspired by an image of a spider web that the team reflected on. There was a lot of commentary around how strong and adaptable that web shape is in nature. And obviously nature and natural heritage is a big part of the services that the State Library provides. And thirdly, that opening as being welcoming, encouraging exploration among public, as well as a place where information enters to be transformed. The fourth element, which was not part of our original exploration, that I think this process with the subcommittee helped us arrive at, was informing the colors through use of the Montana state flag. And to our mind, that only strengthened the mark and really aligned it very tightly with the state. And final note here regarding those colors, The final set of deliverables does include a grayscale logo that can be used to economize printing costs. And I would also like to just note that, additional element of the budget investment to date has been quite a bit of preparation for internal and external rollouts, development of guidelines, the logo library, designs for PowerPoint templates, trade show pieces, and things of that nature that we've had to push pause on and will now have to go back and revise based on the final logo that's chosen. So the $100,000+ investment was not just about a mark. It was about research. It was the design work itself, and then a lot of the materials that come out of that in order to update the state library's assets across the board. So I hope that was helpful.
Who was that?
That was Addie Palin from Hoffman York.
That was Hoffman York. Okay.
I have a chat comment. So from Star Bradley, I would like to respond to some of the comments by the commission, particularly those by Commissioner Hall. As a member of the public, I would like to say that I'm completely in favor of this logo. One of my biggest reasons is for asking the commission to vote yes today is to stop the continued spending of money on this logo project. The money has been spent to design and redesign this logo. I find the comments against adoption of this logo to come from a place of misunderstanding of the mission of the state library. The idea of spending more money on this seems incredibly wasteful and disrespectful to taxpayers. I have also submitted written comment, but I just wanted to make sure that my comments were heard. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Hearing no other public comment, I'd like to call for a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Can I get a roll call, please?
Aye.
Genevieve, will you do the roll call?
Peggy?
Aye.
Elsie?
Aye.
Tammy?
No.
Robin?
No.
Dalton?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
So, sorry. 4 ayes and 2 nays.
The ayes have the vote.
So I'd like to put a motion out there, please, if I could.
Mhm.
Thank you. And this motion is regarding the rollout. And as I had shared before, I think education is exceedingly important as the annotation of the flag colors within this. I think that we missed that. I know I missed that when I was viewed with and had a question with Hoffman and York in the very beginning of the design. So I think it's exceedingly important for leadership right now. And the commission is the leadership along with state librarian to make sure that what we have as an approach of the rollout. I hear staff. I understand that this may be viewed as delay, but I don't believe so. I believe this is an education for the state of Montana to know exactly what the mission of the state library is. Yes, it needs to come from staff, but it must be incorporated with the commission for believability. So with that, I would like to pause at this point, any discussion with any further dollar that is moving forward, understanding that at the private sector, that the company may have invested more so than just design of the logo and the discussion with that. But I believe there is further, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, further investigation that we need as a commission to know the mission of the library going forward. We are the stewards of state taxpayer dollar, and we must be the best stewards, Mr. Chair.
If I could respond. In your meeting materials is an updated document. You've seen a version of this document before that marks the rollout strategy. If I could have Genevieve bring that up.
as I understand it, we did not approve the rollout money. And as I understand it, we have the right not to approve the rollout money. I'm a little confused because one of my objections was that it would be expensive to print this. And Jenny said that we don't print today. The governor's directed that we do everything on email. But that young lady that called in said she's printing cards and handouts and flyers and all this to send out to her when she travels around the state. So obviously printing costs are involved in this, but this has passed. So we will deal with that. But as far as the rollout goes, we are not a nonprofit. We are not a corporation. We change the logo on our website and that's it. We send out a notice on the email that we have a new logo. You know, and I just believe that money that was set aside at this point for rollout is a total waste of money. That money could go back into the trust. And I just urge people not to throw out the money on the rollout. There's absolutely no need. I don't even know what rollout is except for a big corporation. That would be ads at the Super Bowl or whatever. We just put this up, that's it. And to the people who did
Tammy.
get this, yes. That's the question on her.
Mr. Chair, I'm trying to respond to what the rollout looks like and what the opportunity is before us. When staff proposed this rollout 2 years ago and it was unanimously adopted by the commission, we were attempting to solve two key problems. The first problem is that people are not familiar with the state library. They're not aware of our service. The second problem was that if they were using our services, they weren't aware that they were services of the state library. We still face those two problems, and I'm grateful for the adoption of a logo, but adopting a logo does not solve those two problems. Genevieve, if you could scroll up, please. This is a document that this commission has seen on at least two previous occasions. Keep going up to the top, please. That one. So this is the project plan that was approved when we entered into contract with Hoffman York over a year ago. You can see where we are in the process. This was shared with the commission. I believe it was at your July meeting most recently. So we've launched the logo internally. There is still brand implementation to do, but the next steps involve actually making use of the research that Hoffman York has conducted, the information they've garnered from this commission, the information they've garnered from other members of the government and other key stakeholders, to put that information into practice. If you keep scrolling down, there are a number of key identified audiences at the point in time that we are now, since we were not able to launch the rollout earlier this summer as planned. We think it's critical for us to be able to focus on the upcoming legislative session and to address the awareness problems that exist with the legislature understanding the services of the state library. If we push pause on this process at this point, we are wasting an opportunity to get in front of the legislature and use the research that Hoffman York has conducted in such a way that we can best articulate the work of the state library, the services to our patrons, the services of their constituents. So that is what we suggest, where we suggest we put our time and effort. If you can scroll down again. Again, just information about who our key audiences are and what their roles is. One of the key roles for the commission is as that ambassador, helping key stakeholders to understand our role. If you could scroll down one more time. So in terms of the near-term rollout needs and increasing that legislative awareness, we want to be able to create use cases that highlight exactly what some of our key services mean to Montanans. Make sure that, again, patrons come to understand what the state library is, and when they are using our services, that legislators understand what that is, and that they understand how important the state library is to their constituents. If we push pause, if we simply update our logo on our website, we have no ability to leverage the investment that's already been made in this logo. Additionally, we have some other critical needs to raise awareness of some of our news services, including the Montana Real-Time Network. In some of our research, we've found that some of our key stakeholders, like the agriculture community, rely on YouTube to better understand how to resolve technological problems. We would love to have the opportunity to create media on YouTube that targets that kind of key stakeholder on a platform that they are already using to raise awareness about how this kind of program can benefit them. If we push pause, we lose the opportunity to do so. There's been a lot of discussion about the funding that has gone into the investment to date, not just the creation of a logo, but all of that fantastic research, all of the communication about who the State Library is and what we represent. If we do not take the next steps and move forward with this rollout, our ability to leverage that investment of those private dollars will be lost. I share this information with you to respond to questions about what the rollout is and to implore you to allow us to leverage the investment that's been made to date and not miss the incredible opportunity that's before us with the upcoming legislative session.
May I have a question? I'm sorry, Jenny, I understand the goals, but not one of those things made it clear to me why we need Hoffman York to do a rollout. We own the research, and the research was purely that the word library was a very respected word and we need to keep it as our librarians who are doing the work.
Commissioner
We
Hall.
don't need them to go to the legislature. We are doing all these things anyway. Why is Hoffman York necessary for us to go to the legislature and show that we have a new logo? I would propose to you that spending $136,000 to do these things that we have a staff of 50. Our staff in-house of 50 should be doing all of these things to get the word out. They have a new logo now to make people pay attention. There is absolutely nothing to justify hiring an out-of-state company from Madison, Wisconsin, so we can show our logo to the legislature. I would propose to you that's offensive to our legislature and their hard-fought funding. This
Thanks,
is
Commissioner.
crazy.
There's a motion on the table. Superintendent,
Can I read?
I've been sidetracked. Could you please restate
Yes.
your motion?
Thank you so much. Coming back to parliamentary procedures, Jenny, State Librarian, I appreciate your emphasis on this, and I understand, Commissioner Hall, your passion. So to reiterate what I am asking then, and it's to educate the commission as well as to Montana to pause the expense moving forward to really understand what the rebrand will do. I firmly believe as an agency head myself in an elected position that the amount of dollar to do all of these things in the brand rollout will probably encompass more than the $350,000 that was voted on in 2020. So I believe we need to move forward cautiously, and we need to envelop education for the commission as well as honoring the work of staff. Regardless of what the legislative session is going to be doing or anything else. With that, I am asking for a pause at this point to have the state librarian and staff give a presentation to our commission on the exact opportunity rather than bullet points on what the brand rollout will do, if it does include Hoffman York, our current vendor, or if it might include extra, or if it might include something different. At our next commission meeting, that is what I am requesting and asking with this motion.
At the next meeting,
Superintendent Arnson, I think
I second.
we also need to discuss bringing it back just procurement with the Department of Administration and get their counsel as well.
That was a directive in June. I thought that had been done.
I'll
So
amend that.
we've already followed that directive, Commissioner Hall. The directive now is how we would amend a currently agreed upon contract.
Agreed.
Good idea.
Agreed. And I'd be more than happy to add that into it, honoring our state procurement laws that we have.
Yes. I second the motion to pause this and ask for an explanation in December of how the rollout specifically options and not bullet points, but what the money spent on and a clarity from the, what did you say, Dalton?
The Department
of Appropriations as to procurement, if we could do that. I second that motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion amongst the commission?
I have several comments. One, I've always been saying we need to get going on this because when I came on the board a little over a year ago, you do your introductory, and I came on knowing about talking books and the library system. And then when you get here and you see the scope of the resources and what this agency actually does, even I didn't know it. And I don't think very few Montanans, I talk to people and say, did you know that's part of the Montana State Library? And they'll say, no. So I really think we have that key problem and we need to take care of it, whether it's through staff or through help, with the help of Hoffman York. I've always thought that the logo was just one small component. The important part is getting out the message about the Montana State Library. I'm a little concerned about the timetable. If we don't do this until December and the legislature goes into session in January, would we have enough time to do what we need to do to the legislature and the whole state?
So if this motion fails, then Peggy, you would make a motion to fund it, the rollout?
So point of order, the funding is already approved. The motion today that is on the table is to pause future expenditures.
While we find out from the Office of Procurement what's involved. Okay.
If I could provide some clarification on the contract, I think the only reason why we would need to involve procurement is if we, because of a pause, needed to extend the deadline by which those dollars are spent. And certainly if Hoffman York would be willing to renegotiate the contract to have a longer time frame, that would be in their purview. If the commission, and that's not what I'm hearing, if the commission directed us to reduce the amount of the contract or rescind those funds, that would be a different conversation. I also wanted to address the comments about the 50 state library staff that should do this work. We are a fantastic staff. I couldn't be prouder of the staff that we have on hand. We are librarians. We are geographic information professionals. We are biologists. We have Genevieve, who helps us with all of our fantastic communication, as well as providing administrative support and wearing many, many, many hats. We do not have a communications professional on staff. We do not have a public information officer. The kind of successful rollout that we're talking about requires someone or a firm with the kinds of expertise to create use cases, to think about the talking points that resonate with the kinds of stakeholders that we're talking about. And as fantastic as our staff is, we are not those professionals. And in order to best leverage the resources we have, that is why we chose to enter into a contract. And again, I share Peggy's concerns about any kind of delay in this rollout plan. I would be more than happy to provide more detailed guidance on what these bullets mean. And I would certainly want to ask Hoffman York to provide that information since they are the professionals. I would want to do that sooner rather than later. And again, I hope that we can move forward.
Could I, Genevieve, could you roll back to all of the different, yes. Okay, oh, right there. Okay, a little higher. So Hoffman York with the 100 and I don't know, whatever thousand.
140.
Okay,
yeah.
they will be able to provide commercials, make YouTube videos, do the advertising, the information that we need or that is needed by the library to get the information out to the public on what our state library does, what its applications. I mean, they will be able to get it with, I mean, that doesn't seem like a very, I mean, it's a lot of money, but are they going to be able to do all of that with that amount of money? That's my question. I'm sorry. but
That's the intent, and
that's
the dollars
intent.
will go so far.
Okay,
to s-
will there be, okay, I'm sorry.
Please.
Will there be commercials on TV? Will there be commercials on, I mean, Facebook, on YouTube, everywhere, explaining, giving education, I mean, go into the schools, to the libraries, I mean, that's what I want to see out of this. That is what I thought the whole rebrand was. I thought it was a big advertisement. I thought we were doing a huge advertisement, and the logos messed us all up. And I'm sorry for that. And I appreciate the comments and the staff's excitement about the logo. And but it was a big, it was a holdup. I believe if we can go forward and get the that's where I want to go. I want to get the information out. I did not know. Talking Book Library, that is what I thought it was. And I want the state to know how proud we are of our state library and of those 50 people in the state library, how impressed I am with the jobs they do. I want to get that information out. And it's got to get done.
I think I share your exactly what you're saying. My mission on being on this board was to support the librarians and the local libraries and everything they are doing. I understand that over the years, we've moved the 911 calls, the water information calls. We took the U of M Natural Heritage Program, put it in. I know we're putting all these things in the central library, but my concern when I asked Jenny at the last meeting, who are our patrons, is it the librarians? And she said, well, they're not our primary patrons anymore. Well, for me, you are. The local libraries, and when I think people gave money to the trust fund for libraries, along with what Peggy said, they weren't giving money to these things we put in this program now that so what I was trying to say is that we have Evan and how many employees that are doing the technology. They're the people that can put this logo on the technology. I think Peggy's question for me, you know, I'm so grateful when I heard what the librarians are doing out there. I think they are our number one patrons for me. It's so 130 some thousand directly to them is phenomenal. And that's probably what people who gave money to the trust fund had in mind, not talking about the water information system, even though it's important. So I guess what I would say, excuse me, no, I won't, Dalton. Thank you very much. I would encourage, if I understand correctly, that what Elsie's asking for is very simple. We're meeting in December, is that we get an awareness. So if we're supposed to be seeing ads as a result of this money, we know that we're going to see ads. If it's for them to testify the legislature or whatever, we'll see it. We don't know right now what that involves. We haven't spent any time on what that $140,000 will involve. I would encourage people to vote for the pause and ask Jenny to come back next month and just give us a layout. Here's the plan. Here's what Hoffman York, you've got it, they're going to spend money on. And then we'll know. That's all it's good stewardship. And again, I can't even tell you how much I appreciate the librarians. And of course, I appreciate the people doing these things, but these have been moved into the library.
If I could just make a couple of quick additional comments with regard to the State Library Trust. Because we are in a public meeting, I want to state for the record that the State Library tracks individual donors and individual donors' intentions for how those dollars are to be spent. They are to be spent on priorities of the state library, and there's no intent for those monies to be distributed to public libraries. I feel like that's necessary to state for the record. I also want to encourage this commission, perhaps through the Finance Committee or through a volunteer from the commission, to have a commissioner who works with staff on the rollout so that we can make sure that the commission is well educated on the priorities and exact direction of what this rollout would look like. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I could, to add more to this, I think the state library's understanding of the networking with the commission and the staff is exceedingly important. And I believe I could amend that into that there indeed be conversation that the commission has a member, or yourself, of course, as chair of this, could be the liaison. But I firmly believe that, I firmly believe that the logo is not the ultimate end of it. The more important part is the education of a commission that is newly minted, as well as the state of Montana, to understand the value of the state library, regardless of a legislative session or not. The state library is here and going to be moving forward under the leadership of a state librarian, great employees, and a commission. I believe that if we can further understand what the current value of the contract is, as well as what extended consequences or dollar figure might be for a more permanent rollout, as all of these things are very important. I would like to encourage a call of question at this point to a motion that I put forward on pausing, not delaying, but pausing for more educational value on the value of what the state library does as we roll out with precious tax dollars, whether they are from the foundation or from any more that might be amended forward. Mr. Chair.
So for the record, I understand that you amended your motion to pause the rollout and have a member of the commission assist in future conversations.
Always. And it could be you yourself.
As chair, I'll consider that process as we move forward. Do I need a new second?
You need it, yeah, the seconder needs to accept the amendment.
Tammy, do you accept the amendment?
That a board member be appointed to serve on that.
Correct.
Yep.
All right. Is there any other discussion amongst members of the commission who have not spoken yet? Is there any member from the public who would like to speak? Is there a chat?
I'm sorry, I just saw one come through. I'm so sorry. This is anonymous. I have a quick legal question. Can this motion for a pause as an action item be considered if no public notice has been given?
Good question.
Recess.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Doesn't
because
change it.
the motion had been made in 2020 about the deliverable and the vendor, that is something that was already set. This is an amendment to the rollout. I don't believe it's an amendment to the contract, although we did add procurement and had a discussion about that procurement. But what I would do then is to say that anything that we do with the logo would be paused until we put on the agenda, if indeed we want to be as a cautious commission, that anything dealing with funding toward the rollout would be noticed on an agenda, and that wouldn't occur until December. And that would be with ultimate caution as to the anonymous individual that was here. Because it does stand that the rollout is there.
And you also, Dalton, made the point twice that what we were approving today was the logo, nothing else, the logo. So as far as the discussion about how we spend the money and specifically what we're going to do with that money, we have not heard that from anybody at Hoffman York or our staff. We've got the general kind of overview bullet points, but spending money, we need a more specific.
So I believe with Robert's rules, we can have a directive to provide what was asked with an action at the next meeting. Does that sound?
No, that's fine. Because that was just the approval of the logo.
So can I call for a vote or?
So if I could,
What
Mr.
do we-
Chair, offer an amendment again, then to honor the requests that came in, that there would not be any action on this today, but it would be put it on the agenda for the December meeting for any expenditures moving forward. And that way, that would be a full public notice as we are a state commission. And I believe that would fulfill the requests that operating under Robert's rules, as well as a request from the attendee.
I so second. Again, we've been told by Dalton 3 times, this is just the approval of the logo, not moving forward. So that's all we've done.
I just want to understand what this means in practical terms. What I hear the superintendent saying is that we rescind this motion today and put it on the agenda at your next meeting, thus following Robert's rules and open meeting laws. And I think that's right. The commission, when you approved our operating budget in April for this fiscal year, approved a line item for some marketing materials that we could expend on things like business cards, the need to update the website, et cetera. Those dollars were approved by this commission this past April. So I believe we have the authority to move forward with some of those kinds of immediate needs. And then if it's acceptable to the commission, we would bring back Hoffman York to your December meeting, unless you wanted a special meeting sooner, to flesh out exactly in detail what this rollout means. And then at that point in time, if the commission again wants to consider a pause, that's certainly your purview to do so. Does that sound right? And am I clear on the directive going forward?
Thank you. And Mr. Chair and State Librarian Jenny, what this means to me then is that there are dollars already encumbered for those daily tasks. What I would not want the library to do is to initiate any further costs or encumber any other contracts for printing or anything else until it's fully fleshed out on all of these bullet points. And again, use this as an educational moment for
It is.
us as well as for all of Montana to know exactly, the purpose of the rebrand is to put a facade on, but we need to really get deep into what are the meanings of the state library and the role of the library. So I would ask then that those costs be in the normal business practices and not anything further outreaching to say that this is going to be a done deal. Again, the commission is the one that is in charge of the library under your leadership.
Do I need to call a vote to have something placed in the next meeting?
So we're gonna postpone indefinitely. So someone needs to make a motion that the pending motion be postponed until, and then a stated date, and then that gets voted on.
Great.
Would you like to amend?
So moved. I mean, I'm good with what she said. If you'd like to reiterate one more time.
Would you repeat that?
I know, just to make sure.
I'll say Elsie moves, Elsie Arntzen moves that the pending motion be postponed until the December commission meeting.
for public notice.
Yes, to have public comment received.
And then possibly to also ensure then that the daily workings of the library still continue, but no other costs associated with the use of the logo be attributed until the next commission meeting.
In other words, we have already appropriated and purchased, which we did, and this logo with the 164,000. But the remaining expenditures cannot happen till we discuss it in December as to how they will be spent.
And Jenny, as a line item in April, said that we had approved office material. That, so that will take care of that also.
Yeah. We're just not expending the rest of the money till we know where it's going, which is the job of the commission.
I want to be very clear that what I understand the commission to be saying is that we shouldn't expend any more dollars under the contract with Hoffman York.
Exactly.
But that we have the authority to spend the dollars that exist within the state library budget as approved by the commission. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, I think that's what I understand. Elsie, is that what you meant? We're not expending any more Hoffman York money until we understand where it's coming, what it's doing. But you will, under your regular budget, continue.
And this is not to hamper or delay
Yeah.
any of the employee action moving forward.
Commissioner Hall, would you like to update your second?
I think we've seconded all those motions that say the final there. And if you want to read it again, so we know.
Do you guys even read it again? It's been added on. Elsie move that the pending motion be postponed until the December meeting. No further money will be spent with Hoffman York beyond what was included in the budget of the state library.
Second, that's clear.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment? Hearing no public comment, I'd like to call for a vote. Hopefully I don't slaughter this. But we are going to postpone the current conversation to be placed on the next agenda without spending funds that have been earmarked for Hoffman York. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those against signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any abstentions? All right. I just want to thank everyone for the lengthy conversation. I truly believe we need to engage as a full commission and come together as a body to communicate the vision forward during the legislative session. As we continue our conversation at the December meeting, I encourage us to use our voice and our vision of the library to think about our actions. Seeing that we are finished all items of the consent agenda, I would like to call a 10-minute recess.
Are we breaking for lunch? Or are we bringing it in, or what are we doing?
We have lunch. We'll do a lunch break. And this will just be a 10-minute and you guys want to, we can do a lunch break. We have it here so we can break for lunch whenever we like.
Whichever you prefer. Let's get some sustenance.
All right, let's extend that recess to 30 minutes.
And do lunch? Okay.
Okay.
And I just wanted to let you all know that in addition to lunch, staff member Amelia Kim has provided us with a lovely cake that we'll be sharing.
Nice.
Who did that?
Amelia Kim.
Amelia Kim, is she here?
No, she's
Oh,
not.
we gotta thank her.
So we will reconvene the meeting at 12:20.
Mics are live.
All right, the Montana State Library Commission meeting is back in session. First on the information items for the agenda are state library draft policy review.
So members of the commission, we have two draft policies for your review. I'm going to handle the first one for Sharon Hardwick, and then Kara is going to present the second one. Again, these are presented as drafts for this meeting, and you'll see them again for action at your December meeting. The draft revisions to the comp time policy are essentially administrative updates to an existing policy that was last seen by the commission in 1998. So we needed to update references to the appropriate policies from the state of Montana. And then you can see that we updated language regarding the differences between exempt time and non-exempt time. So that's clear for staff. This particular policy has had legal review by Agency Legal Services, and again is presented to you as a draft. If you have questions or suggestions for the policy, you can let me know, or Sharon Hardwick, our Human Resources Specialist, know ahead of the December commission meeting. Are there any questions initially about this particular policy? Then I would ask Kara to present the e-resources collection development policy.
Hello again. I believe this is my first in-person commission meeting since before COVID. And so it's a pleasure to be here and to see everybody in person and introduce myself. I'm Kara Orban. I am the consortia coordinator. Jenny described some of my responsibilities earlier. And one of my responsibilities is to work with libraries across the state to share electronic resources. I will probably go over some things that you may already know, but I don't want to make assumptions either. So about a year ago, the Network Advisory Council restructured and formed some core services committees to provide subject matter expertise to the NAC so that they would be better informed on funding recommendations for services, that those recommendations then come to the commission. And one of our core services committees addresses e-resources specifically. That's a pretty jargony term, so I will explain more fully what we currently have by way of e-resources. We, of course, have the Montana Library to Go program, which serves Montanans through 93 libraries across the state. There are over 100,000 Montanans registered for Montana Library to Go, and that collection usually holds about 60,000 items, I believe. That fluctuates due to licenses expiring and bringing on different kinds of licensing models for different titles, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood. With the pandemic response funds that we received from the federal government, we added some services into Montana Library to Go, including a subscription to the Great Courses. And so patrons could check out a 7-day pass to view the Great Courses through their Montana Library to Go accounts. We have a subscription to a service called Method Test Prep, which provides testing preparation materials to students who are getting ready for the SAT or ACT tests. And then we have a subscription to a service called Universal Class, which offers courses that are eligible for continuing education units. And that could be anything from an Excel course to a cooking course. It could be personal enrichment or things that they're actually taking to to enhance their job skills. And so those are all auxiliary services that we added onto Montana Library to Go as pilots using our pandemic relief funds. We also have a contract with the Digital Public Library of America, which is a similar platform to Montana Library to Go. It's an ebooks and audiobooks platform, but it is a library-driven, library-owned platform. And so we are exploring whether we can see a better cost value for purchasing and having more completely the rights to the materials that we buy for Montanans through the DPLA pilot. We also have invested some pandemic relief funds into providing remote access to a popular genealogy database called Heritage Quest, and we do not hold the contract for that subscription. The Missoula Public Library does on behalf of libraries across the state, but we extended access and remote access to all Montanans through their public and tribal libraries. And so that is a kind of quick overview of some of the electronic resources that we currently have either procured or supported using the funding that comes through the state library. And the purpose of this collection development policy draft is to explain the principles behind what kinds of things we try to provide through procurement or through hosting resources for Montanans, where our funding sources are derived, the selection process at a high level, and the importance of collaborative collections. And then we also recognize the need to provide a process for citizens of Montana to request reconsideration of materials that they may find objectionable in the collection so that they can bring those concerns to our Core Services Committee and perhaps eventually to the commission. And this is a draft that was written with input from the Core Services Committee, but was also built on the work of the Montana Library to Go Selection Committee and the Executive Committee of the Montana Library to Go. And so we are building upon that work, but because we are looking more holistically at all of the e-resources that we currently provide and that we anticipate and hope to provide in the future, we recognize the need for a more expansive, comprehensive policy. And so this draft is being presented to you today for your input and your questions.
Thank you, Kara. Are there any questions from the commission?
The only question I had is kind of runs back to the discussion we had last time about the values. And I was reading through and I think even more than walking in the library and having access to books is having access to age appropriate materials on the the whole process. And so this was really well done. I thought it was easy to follow and really well written, but I was wanting something in here that said that e-materials, even if it's to tell the parents to put a block on if they're uncomfortable, or is anything to put in there age appropriate materials? Because I think I'm concerned at the accessibility people have with unage appropriate. But I didn't know where or if you want to consider that somewhere, but I thought maybe I'd just turn it back to you to look at it if it fits anywhere.
Okay, so we'd like some language in here about age appropriate materials and addressing collections that might be specifically for children.
Yeah, if, that even if it was to encourage parents, if they have concerns, they're responsible at their end to do age appropriate blocking, or I don't, like somebody said last time, one mother said, I don't care what my kids read, they can read anything. And somebody else said, well, I block it, what I want. So I just don't know where that fits in this big picture, because it is the parents, but sometimes.
I think that might fall under the section on personal responsibility, and I think we could articulate some language about parental caregiver decisions resting.
I think even more than books in the library, this puts us in a really vulnerable situation. The librarians with what's, going out, coming in and what kids are, but anyway, so I just want to share that concern.
Thank you.
But otherwise, great work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kara.
Thank you.
Jenny, it's you and Aaron.
Members of the commission, just an update from the Land Information Advisory Council. We had a meeting in early September. They are currently working on the FY 24 land information plan. That plan will be posted for public comment in the next couple of days, and we'll be bringing that final plan to the Land Information Council at their November meeting. At their November meeting, we expect that they would then recommend that commission to the State Library Commission for adoption. This is the normal part of the process for adopting that land information plan. The other important element of the council meeting that I want to share with you is about an effort that we are working under the governor's office with to evaluate the existing Land Information Act statutes. And you have information in your meeting materials about the existing statutes and administrative rules that govern the Land Information Act. Unfortunately, Evan went home sick, so he's not available to present the history. So I will ask him to come back in December to present that information to you. Also in December, we hope that the Land Information Advisory Council will be prepared to recommend changes to the Land Information Act for your consideration. And if the commission moves them forward, we would then bring them through the legislative process to update those statutes. There are some statutes and administrative rules in particular that we think warrant reconsideration. And again, this is a part of the governor's red tape relief effort to help reduce some of the administrative and bureaucratic redundancies that exist within state government. We have a small subcommittee of the Land Information Advisory Council and an intern from the governor's office looking at the legislation. One component of the legislation that we're looking at is the makeup of the Land Information Advisory Council. It's a council of more than 20 members, so it's a very, very large council. And it's also written in statute that the entire council turns over every 2 years. And so we have no ability to build in any kind of institutional knowledge or longevity into the makeup of the council. So one of the things that we're looking at is to reduce the size of the council, making sure we still have appropriate representation that will allow us to do the work directed to us through the act, but to make sure that we have the size of a council that allows us to function efficiently, and then to also put in some kind of staggered terms so that the entire council doesn't turn over and have to be reappointed every 2 years. Another component that we are looking at in the administrative rules is the requirement that we do an annual land information plan. That's problematic because, as I said, we are in the middle of doing the planning for the FY 24 plan. And yet we have only just entered into FY 23. We've only just signed grant agreements for FY 23 with those grant recipients. So we have no time in the process to allow for us to learn from and evaluate the work that we're doing before we're again having to plan. So we would like to have the planning process focus on the strategic planning work that we're doing and give us a more appropriate length of time to evaluate and learn from how we are making those investments rather than constantly being in this kind of planning cycle. Those are a couple of the objectives that we have with the red tape relief legislative review. There may be others coming from the council as well. And again, the council will consider those legislative changes at their November meeting. We intend to bring those to you in December ahead of the legislative session. Assuming legislative changes are made after the legislative session, we would plan to bring the commission changes to the administrative rules to update those rules and make sure the rules reflect any changes to the legislation. That concludes my report from the council. If there are any questions.
Hearing no questions, Aaron, it looks like you're up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erin Fashway. I am the State of Montana GIS Coordinator. And today I want to talk to you about, very loud, the integration of the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure address information into both 911 and elections workflows. So this is informational only. Some of you I'm seeing in meeting for the first time. And I hope that throughout your tenure as a commissioner, we can bring more presentations regarding GIS and inform everyone. With me today in the cheap seats, I've got Michael Fashaway. He is the Land Information Manager and Structures and Addresses Extraordinaire. Also, Stuart Fuller from the Montana Secretary of State's office is the Election and Voter Manager Services. So when I can't answer a technical question, they're both going to run up here and help me.
Michael has your last name.
They're married.
Oh,
for the
there you
record.
go. Okay.
Non-supervisor roles. All right, so if you want to, thank you. Okay, outline. So I just wanted to give a brief overview of what I want to talk to you about today. So first, we're going to just high level overview of addressing framework and history of addresses in the state of Montana, the actual geospatial data set. I want to talk to you a little bit about structures and addresses and how they're used in NextGen 911. The importance of our partnership with the Secretary of State's office and how we're starting to utilize this same addressing layer into election efforts. So just I guess another bit of a background. So the Montana State Library is responsible for GIS coordination and maintaining the geospatial data layers of what we call the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure. You'll hear me say that a lot. If you have any questions, please let me know. But those are the 15 layers that we have deemed valuable as a state to do business. And today I'm just going to talk to you about structures and addresses. So if you want to move on to the next one. Thank you. So if you've been through the page, this looks familiar to you. So basically the overall outline of what we collect are it's a database of primary structure points, buildings and their addresses. So we want a one-to-one relationship. So for every parcel, and there's a primary structure on that, we want to have that in our system. And it consists of point data. So if you think about it on a map, there's points, lines, and polygons. So it's just a dot on a map, a lat long. It's much more complicated than that, but we keep that up to date. And that is a statewide database that a lot of folks use, and we'll dive into that. If you will go to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So here's a little bit of a history of the structures and addressing framework. So after 9/11, there was a big push to make sure that critical infrastructure and critical structures for the nation were collected. And Montana got its start in around 2005. We received a grant from the Office of Domestic Preparedness to start collecting this information. And that's when our first data model was created. Now, over the years, we were collecting critical information and infrastructure and structures, and it got to a point where information was too sensitive to be publicly available, so there was a split. One is now maintained, that critical sensitive data by Homeland Security. The others, we continue to operate and care for and continue to maintain here. Moving forward into the future, oh, and also in 2006, it became an official framework data layer. Into the future, between 2009 and 2010, we started focusing on collecting the non-sensitive information. So it was in the beginning, we were collecting in hospitals and mortuary facilities, airports, and anything that you could think of for Homeland Security reasons would be extremely important. So we decided that the Homeland Security would take on the critical stuff, and that the Montana State Library, actually it was ITSD at the time, would continue to take on the non-sensitive information, the publicly accessible. And then there was a big push to start collecting address data, because it was to have a point that represented a courthouse was great, but not having that address associated with it wasn't as valuable. Then around 2011, we again started to focus on collecting those addressing points, awareness and compliance in 2012 with Next Generation 911. I'll give a very brief overview of that. And then from 2015 to the present, we've been actively working towards the Next Gen 911 compliance. So originally, when the address information points were being collected, it was for E911. And essentially, the very basic level, E911 was showing the address on a computer. That's basically it. There was no other geospatial analysis being done. It was visually. And then that dispatcher was able to use that address point when dispatching. Next Generation 911 increases the reliance on GIS address points because there's actually analysis that's done behind the scenes. So not only is it a visual point by the dispatcher, it also tells you, okay, well, the call came in from this lat long, and I need to dispatch these correct people and these services. So there is a geospatial analysis that goes on behind the scenes. We are working to make sure that the addressing data for the state of Montana is Next Generation 911 compliant, because that's the authoritative data level we're getting from local governments, and that information should be able to be used in all types of uses for addressing information. So that is right now a recognized decentralized GIS data set for the state of Montana. Looking at my notes, I want to make sure I didn't leave anything. Okay, so sometimes pictures are easier, and this is a very oversimplification process of what used to happen. So you can understand. So before cell phones, so this house represents a call coming. So the phone is the landline attached to the house. Before cell phones, each address was associated with a phone number. So that phone number would come in, it would go to the dispatch, and they would know that phone number comes in, it's attached to that address. And then the dispatcher would be able to dispatch the correct authority depending upon the emergency. Next. So what happened? Houses started moving? No. Our phone systems changed. So now this is the end goal. We're not completely to the next generation system yet, but this is the end goal. And this is why GIS data is so extremely important for 911. So I have my call. I'm not going to call 911. Okay, so I'm going to explain this photo or my mock-up. So the satellite in the sky, GPS, tells me where I am. So my lat long. So if I were to call 911, I think I'd probably be able to get a signal in here, and it's going to know where my lat long is. Technically, if I pull up Google Maps, you all do, it'll tell you your lat long, okay? So that's where the GPS comes in. I did approve this through Michael before I showed it to you. Okay, so then when you make your phone call, it goes to the cell towers. That cell tower with Next Gen 911 and the systems behind it is going to do a geospatial analysis prior to that person even picks up. And it's going to go to the right dispatch center. And then from that, they're going to be able to send the correct people out. That is an oversimplification. It's a very complicated process. Okay, any questions? So not only, and I just am talking about address data here, but not only is address data really important, but a lot of the other foundational layers, MSDI, are extremely important. Boundaries, imagery, cadastral, some of those other ones that we maintain. So next slide, please. So we want one address data set for all. So I am the representative for Montana on the National States Geographic Information Council. It's a council made up of my peers to discuss geospatial matters. And honestly, I've seen other states use and have multiple addressing data layers. That's the last thing we would ever want here. Data is very expensive. And so this kind of came about prior to the pandemic, but when there was a push for geo-enabling elections, and then there's this continued Next Gen 911 addressing data layer, Michael and I had a lot of discussions. We can't let this be two separate data sets. We cannot this has to be from the same authoritative data set. And through the work of the council and our parties, we started a pilot project. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but anyway, basically we wanted one address data set for all. So leveraging that one authoritative data set that we coordinate with local government on to receive and put into that national data layer, or excuse me, state data layer. And then we also federate it up to the national data layer as well. Oh, sorry, go back. So we started working with the Secretary of State's office and election administrators. Basically, we came up with a process so that local government was informing each other via local government elections process and that local government addressing collections, so that if new addresses came up, they were informing each other, and then that information would be sent to the statewide data layers. So there's a lot of parallels between what the work or how the work had been done for Next Gen 911 and elections. It was all tabular based. So no geospatial component to it. It was a list of addresses. Well, if I give you a list of addresses, are you really going to understand that spatially? No, it's better understood if you have that, have that geospatial side. If there is a lat long tied to it, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can click on things and understand it spatially. And then the other parallel is we need an address for every dispatchable address. So we want 911 to come here when we call them. We want 911 to go to our schools when we call them. We want 911, honestly, to find us on a river access point. So for every place where we can dispatch, we need a valid address. Same thing goes for voters. So for every person that's registered to vote, we need a valid address for them. And so the other thing is we need statewide data coverage and standardized addresses that can work for all systems. And then, of course, address points located at the structure. And I don't have a visualization of this, but in the past, the point in which the address is located was at the road. And if you drive all the way out to Daniels County, well, you probably don't have to go that far. Some roads, or excuse me, some driveways could be about a half mile long. And a voting district could split the house from the road. And so that point is on the road when you need it to be on the house. And so we are working with local government to move all that information to an address point to be located on the structure. So it's a large push, and it's in a standard for Next Gen 911, also for elections. So again, similarities, one data set for all. I'm really noticing my hand motions right now.
Are you Italian?
No, I'm Irish. Okay, next slide. So our partnership with the Secretary of State's office in 2018, we started working with NSGIC, again, the National States Geographic Information Council. And I represented Montana and GIS professionals, and I was on a steering group to help form the best practices and develop a pilot project for geo-enabling the nation's elections. And I was on the periphery kind of developing these best practices, and I said, well, I want to do this. And got in contact with the Secretary of State's office with Stuart Fuller. And we started discussing, actually, I think he reached out to me first. And we started discussing his plans and the Secretary of State's plans to move to a new system that basically allowed for geo-enabling elections. We went through 2 rounds of this pilot project to further enhance the work we were doing, test it out for Montana. And then also we had a grant program that was very similar through the MLIA grant program that utilized the best practices in local government as a test case to make sure it was going to work. And then in 2021, we officially solidified our agreement with the Secretary of State's office under a contract. And through that, we were able to hire a GIS specialist to solely work on the geo-enabled elections efforts. And then this past year, we've been compiling statewide election boundaries and geocoding voter addresses against that, that official authoritative GIS data layer. So here are some of the benefits to elections management. So we've seen just a geospatial awareness of voters, a better understanding where voters are located, and ease of registering new voters so that if the system is pulled up and a voter comes in, they no longer, if they don't have a proper address, they can look on the map and work with the elections administrator to get that person registered in the correct location. An increase in confidence that voters receive the correct ballot. Post redistricting, so when the redistricting process is completed, it will be a lot easier and reduce manual workflows to assign these voters to the new precincts that were created. So before, I do believe it was Gallatin County recently at the Montana Clerk and Recorder's Office said, I've been doing this for, I don't know, the past 20 some years, if not 30. And he had, and imagine doing this for Gallatin County, going through each table, each voter address and assigning them a new precinct. Now it can all be done geospatially. How that's done, you know, whether they grab a bunch of voters, they do the type of analysis where they're overlying polygons, that's up to each county, but it can be used, the GIS can be used to help save time and money and reduce those manual workflows that we've seen. And that is it. It's a lot. I can clarify anything, or I can have my fellow partners in crime help clarify as well. Do you have any questions?
I am amazed. So I use Find My, and my daughters were silly enough to allow me to follow them. So of course, so I follow them. And so this is kind of like that, isn't it? I mean, I can follow my daughter that is a nurse in Missoula home to her house and get there exactly.
Yes, I don't use that technology, but I think I know what you mean. I have an app.
So it's, yeah. So it's,
So yeah, her phone is emitting a lat long, and depending upon the device, it's, you know, every second,
right,
every 10 minutes, it's telling that the phone where it is, then the phone's app says, okay, this is where she is, and communicates that
right,
to you.
that is amazing. So you have taken the election, like from the audit, where the state,
Local government.
yeah. So you have taken all of that along with all the 911, and instead of each agency doing their own, that's,
addressing.
yeah, the addressing, that is why it is
Yes.
so pertinent, because then instead of everyone else doing it and it being scattered, you're getting it all together.
Correct. And so I don't know if there's any other agency that's creating statewide addressing data, but what we're trying to do is work with all the agencies methodically to enable their their addressing
Right.
data sets. And then eventually we'll probably go to adopting an address standard. Another example is Medicaid. We'd work with Medicaid, and basically they wanted to understand where their Medicaid users were when it came to living within a tribal boundary. And so another one recently was ServiceNow. We're working with the Department of Commerce. They basically want to know where their projects were located, in what districts that they had. And so in the past, they were paying for a service. When we have this authoritative service that those companies they pay for are extracting it from us. We're also working at the national level to ensure that these companies that take geospatial data assets, maybe value add, and then repackage those and sell those, are using our data.
Commercial. She's a commercial. Right there.
Aaron, thank you. A question that I have for you is, this is a tremendous responsibility for the Montana State Library to perform. How important is it for the public to understand this is part of the Montana State Library?
Oh, it's extremely important. And so I think it was at the April meeting. Let me take a step back. So I had worked with some of my colleagues in the former GIO for the state of New York, and I had reached out and I said, I kind of feel like I'm spinning my wheels sometimes. And he said, do you have a strategic plan in place? And I said, no, it's outdated. So we went through that process last year to basically address some of the major priorities that we need to work on. And the first one was basically communication. A lot of people do not know what we do. It fit in very well with what was going on with the rebranding process. And so we were able to give the strategic plan and some of the business plans developed for achieving the goals, the priorities of improving communications and just letting people know what we do to Hoffman York. And we're using those to prioritize some of our work efforts. Not everyone knows what we do. Not everyone understands the technology. I usually can, I think the cadastral, it's always been an application and data set that people really understand. And that's usually how I start a conversation if they're not familiar with the work that we do. But Next Gen 911 and public safety is extremely important. People want to be able to have 911 come when they call. They want to have FedEx deliver that package, especially around the holidays or every day during COVID. And then also, we want to make sure the right ballot is getting to the right voter. It's one very extremely important piece, but it's just a small piece of the greater MSDI.
You are not spinning your wheels. You are amazing. That's so great.
I would second that. I'm so impressed, Aaron, with your presentation. Since I got on this board, two of the main questions that I've received from various people were, why isn't the addressing for the 911 under the AG and the law and order area of the state, and why isn't the voter under the SOS? And it seems like putting them here is a strange placement, but you explained that really well, that you don't want it duplicated. And I think that was really helpful for me today and gave me information I needed to answer the many questions I get about this. People know you do it, but they don't know why it's here. And the other question I had is, who has access to this data? How do you get access to this data? Can anybody call up and say, I want addresses of voters?
Okay, so what we would give them is the entire address database for the entire state. So just addresses not associated with any public or PII. So any kind of private information. So what we have are points with an address associated with it. That information, and one of the foundational concepts of the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure and the Montana Land Information Act, is to make sure that all non-sensitive information is made publicly available. So that everyone can be working off of the same data set and be able to deliver those services based on these geospatial data layers. And so if you ask me, I would say, well, I can give it to you in multiple ways. There's downloadable data sets. There's something called a web service where you can access it over a website. And then for folks who do not have a geospatial background, they don't have the software, the expertise to know how to use the information, we try to make web maps or applications available to promote these products like Cadastral. Not everyone would be able to understand how to download a geo database, use it in the correct software. The software is very expensive. And so what we do is we make tools so that public can understand the information and that it's presented in a way that everyone essentially has access.
So the public can or can't?
Can get the address.
Can.
Yes.
Okay, because you mentioned that Medicaid was interested in working with you. And my first thought was, you know, I personally wouldn't want that kind of information,
Right.
you know,
Okay. Let me clarify.
available to somebody who calls up and now they have my address, my name, and you know, my disabled daughter is on these services or what, that kind of thing is not available, right?
Absolutely no. So what they do is they use, so you can consider, let's say there's an address, there's a table and it's got a person's name and social security and address and any other kind of information that Medicaid would need. The only information that they need from that table to use GIS and to spatially locate those is the address data. So what we do is what's called a geocode. So we say, don't give us, if we're assisting them in doing the geocoding for them, that's basically taking an address and creating a lat long out of that. We don't want any private data, any personal data. It's only that address. So the address itself has no personal information tied to it. Then we can return to them the geospatial file and they can do what's called like a merge and put that data back together. Or in the case of some of our partners and friends over at DPHHS, we show them, we teach them. So that's another huge component of MSDI is teaching folks how to use it properly, is that we're constantly working with our professionals and our counterparts that use GIS to understand how to use the data correctly.
But if political parties called you and wanted the voter registration,
No, we don't house that data.
good.
Yeah.
You have the voter registration, but not access to anybody who wants it.
Nope, just the address. Just address data. That's all we hold. The state of
Okay.
Montana.
All right.
Erin, can I ask a clarification question? Thanks for being here today. I heard you say when maybe you can't identify the location where a person needs to register to vote and you're looking at a map, they can pinpoint exactly that the house is here, maybe the driveway is there. But what identification do you need? I mean, so that just I can't go and say, oh yeah, I live here in this house.
That is a question. And I'm going to let Stuart answer that.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Stuart Fuller. I'm the Election Voter Services Manager for the Secretary of State. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this question, members of the board. So to address your question, so to register to vote, it requires certain level of legislatively mandated ID. Usually that's provide a driver's license or last four social security number, and then they say where they live, and they're attesting on where they live. In our old system, it was just give me your address and we would have this tabular data. And then on that row, literally in a spreadsheet or in the database, it would say you're in this precinct and this subpart of a precinct. And then that would be associated with all the other information of what congressional district you were in, what legislative district, what school district, fire district, water board, all of those things would be associated with that precinct and split. With our new system, and working with our friends at the library, what it does is actually takes that lat long and it associates with precincts, and again, a precinct split, but it's based on the lat long of that structure. And we also have the ability to display that map now that we have that included with our system. And part of the election law is to say, hey, if you do not have an address, let's say you just built your house and the county hasn't assigned you an address yet. Where do you live? Well, then now instead of getting out the big map and saying, well, I live over here, you know, up Copper Creek by Landers Fork and Lincoln, on this old mining claim, it would be, I can point to the map. Yeah, I'm about there where that road forks, and we can drop an address point in our software, get an lat long, and then register them there. And because we have the lat long, that automatically assigns the precinct split. That automatically assigns what voting districts and what ballot you're ultimately in again.
And that's the component I was wondering about. What verification do you have that I'm not just coming in and saying, I bought that piece of property and I live there? Do you require a deed or what do you require?
So that's all statutorily mandated. We don't require verification that you own the property because a lot of people rent or temporarily living there. You're a resident in that location for 30 days. And then you're also providing that ID. There's alternate, if you don't have that ID, there's alternatives in the law, options like a current utility bill showing your current address.
Can I ask a question? Along with what Kristen is saying, we've had situations in Bozeman where college students are registering and voting in Bozeman, but they're also registering and voting in their home, whether those are two different counties. Would you be aware of that? Would it register that, wait a minute, you've already registered to vote in Gallatin County or Yellowstone?
So under federal and state law, it is it's offense against the law to vote twice in an election. And so for college students in particular, Montana law says you have to be residents of the county where you live 30 days before the election you're offering to vote at. So college students typically can qualify to vote in Montana, or if they lived in Oregon. I went to school in Oregon. I'm from Idaho, and I was an out-of-state student in Oregon. Did I vote in Oregon? No, I voted in Idaho absentee. But I could have voted in Oregon because for residency for tuition purposes and residency for voting purposes, it's two completely different things. You just have to be a resident for 30 days. So how do we prevent them from voting twice? When we fill out the form, you're also supposed to say if you've been previously registered, and this is something you're signing under penalty of fraud, that you're previously registered in a state, and we send that state those what are called cancellations. Hi, Joe Smith is registering to vote in Gallatin County. We send that state, and then they send it to their counties wherever they handle cancellations to say, hey, this person registered in Montana. I'm going to cancel their voter registration in Michigan or in Oregon or in Idaho. So that's how that is.
But within the state, you would not notify Yellowstone County or?
Within the state, because we have a statewide system.
Yeah.
And all the counties use the statewide system. There's various duplication checks and there's various searches that you can do when you put that person's name in, it's going to pull up that record. And it's say, oh, well, this person's registered in Billings instead of in Bozeman. What they're going to do is they're going to move that registration and they pull the registration from Yellowstone County and then register that person in Gallatin.
That's great.
And then the other thing, particularly in this particular time of the election where absentee ballots are going out on Friday. So you can imagine the big counties have all their ballots already stacked in big trays and ready to go to the post office. Is the system is smart enough when you move that person, when you take them, you have to void their current absentee ballot that would be for Yellowstone voids that ballot in the system, and then they will issue a new one in Gallatin. And what happens is if they happen to forget and try to vote twice, we'll be charitable. People get confused, they forget that they happen to turn in that ballot to Yellowstone. Yellowstone, when they put it in the system and they read the barcode, is they're going to say, you can't accept this ballot because it's voided, and they will not accept that ballot. So that's how we prevent that from what we call county to county moves. But getting back to the focus of this talk, part of what we're doing in the new system is geo-enabling those addresses so that we have really accurate location information. And that's going to help us so much when we do redistricting.
Oh, that's great.
So because redistricting is a big chore, and you can imagine working with tables of addresses, 0 to 1000 Main Street, Holton, Montana is this precinct. And now you have to change the precinct, line by line. We can do this in the new system, basically by Aaron handing me the new precinct split map, what's called a precinct split map. And we pushing the button and say, hey, change all the addresses to the right precinct split. That's
Thank you so much. And did you say you were with a different department before MSL or working with them?
So I've worked for the state for almost 24 years. I
Right.
was with the Department of Administration. I actually helped with the Montana Land Information
Okay.
Act transfer to MSL back in 2011. And then I was the Chief Information Officer for HHS for 5 years before I came to SOS. So I could sort of know about Medicaid too.
Yeah.
But personally, I have a background in volunteer fire. And so I knew about extended E911. And so when we started doing about addresses, I was like, oh, I know about the library. They have E911 addresses. Let's have one address for voters. And if I can send, I say, if I can send a fire truck or a police car there, should be able to send a ballot there and know where the voter lives.
Thank you so much.
Stuart is like a dream come true in coordination. It's like, I always say, it's like peanut butter and chocolate. When he came knocking, I'm like, yes. Sometimes half our battle is trying to get folks to understand the importance and to coordinate with us. And with his background, he totally understood. And so it's a very good partnership and we're really excited to continue working. And it's we got a big job ahead of us next year. Basically, I just got a notification in Teams that one of the counties that we were waiting on, we had 3 left. So now we only have 2 had sent us data. So we almost have 56 counties worth of precinct splits. But essentially all that gets thrown out with redistricting. We start over again next year. So we've got a big push ahead of us. Any other questions?
Just thank you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate being here. And if you have questions, please let me know and I can try to clarify things further. You'll be seeing me again. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
We're at Rebecca.
Rebecca.
We don't have everything up there, right?
Hello, I'm Rebecca Camp. I'm your data coordinator for the State Library. I'm going to present from over here so that I can man the computer. And today I'm going to be talking to you about our different data products we have at the State Library. The State Library values data-driven planning and decision-making. And moreover, as information professionals, we help connect the public with information about state government. And MSL maintains a comprehensive collection of state agency publications so that we can safeguard the public's right to know. And this work starts with our own agency. We produce many different data products that provide transparency about our work at MSL. And today I plan to show you how to access and navigate 5 of those different products. And Genevieve, if possible, can I share my screen?
Go ahead.
I got this.
All right.
Transparency.
So the 5 products I plan to show you are the annual report, our program dashboards, the MSL work plan, the OGSM framework, and the interim budget committee reports. And I'm going to start with our annual reports. And the way that you can get to the annual report is by going up to About the Library. I'm on our MSL website right now. And from About the Library, you can go to Publications. And right here, we have our annual reports. I'm going to open our 2022 reports. Each September, MSL publishes an annual report that describes the work achieved in the previous fiscal year. The report also includes a financial summary and a description of the library's organizational structure. What I particularly like about this report is that it captures the diversity of the work we achieve at the State Library. We do so much, it's impossible to capture everything, but the report does a good job of summarizing some of MSL's top achievements for the last fiscal year. It's produced for an audience composed of administration, the Library Commission, our vested partners, and the public. So if we scroll down just a little bit here, you can see that the report is broken down into 5 different sections. And the first section is an introductory letter composed by the state librarian, and that's the year in review. I also wanted to mention that right now we're looking at a story map of the report, but back on that annual reports page, it is also available as a printable PDF if you prefer to navigate the information in that way. The second section is our agency highlights. This section includes text and supplementary materials like maps, audio, images, and charts. As I mentioned before, we have highlights from most of our teams, including library consulting and lifelong learning, continuing education, the Montana Memory Project, Montana Library to Go, Montana Shared Catalog, the Montana Land Information Act Grant Program, Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure, the Real-Time Network, Geo-Enabled Elections, Next Generation 911, the Montana Natural Heritage Program, Information Products, State Government Information, and the Talking Book Program. It's a long list, so while the report can't possibly be all inclusive, it does hit on our most notable projects from the year, which are provided to us from the leads for these various teams. The third section of the report is our goals and objectives. And then fourth, we have our financial summaries. Finally, we have a section on structure, which describes the commission, our advisory councils, and major staff work groups. I encourage you to read through this entire report if you haven't had a chance yet. It's a really great way to get an understanding of what we do at the state library across our various teams. Next, I plan to demonstrate how to access our Montana State Library dashboards. So while the annual report captures information at the end of the fiscal year, our dashboards are an ongoing collection of the trends and progress that we have towards our various projects. So I'm going to go back to the Montana State Library website. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, there's this card here that says dashboards. Alternatively, any page that you're on the website, you can also select dashboards from the footer. We're going to click on the card. And you can see here that we have multiple different dashboards that we update mostly on a monthly basis. The one I want to call up first is this FY23 MSL programs dashboard. And as I mentioned, the annual report, that's at the end of the year, but the programs dashboard is going to be your ongoing presentation of program trends and data. The data are updated each month. If in doubt, you can check the most recent update date at the bottom of each dashboard. And you can see here that we have dashboards for many of MSL's different programs. I'm going to call up the government information dashboard as an example of what's contained in these dashboards. So here we're seeing the government information dashboard, and the government information team at the state library focuses on collecting state publications, and those documents are curated through Archive-It and archive.org. Archive-It includes time-stamped snapshots of government websites. These are state publications that are born digitally, and information that's produced on the web is intrinsically susceptible to being revised or deleted over time. It's just the nature of the web. So MSL archives these sites so that the public can retain permanent access to the information. Over here on the left, you see our Archive-It views for each month in fiscal year 23. And these are broken down into collection. We have two different collections. First, we have mt.gov Connect, which includes our state government sites and web documents. And then second, we have Montana County Connect, which features government websites from Montana counties, cities, towns, public school districts, public libraries, and tribal governments. Altogether, these make up over 1,800 archived sites, each of which are crawled and captured multiple times. So what that looks like for the user is on the Archive-It site, you can pull up a website in a particular place and time. So if you wanted to see how a website looked last year at this time, you could pull that up and see a snapshot of that website. And we can see here that the site is being used for looking at many different types of information. The top archive sites that we're finding are the courts, Medicaid, the Montana Library Association, Montana State Library itself, as well as the Montana Bar, and information on marketmt.com and equal pay. Next, we have archive.org, and archive.org is it's digitized publications that are dating from 1860 to the present. And these are publications for the most part that were originally in print, but we have since digitized them. And you can see that this is a heavily used collection. In the most recent month, the MSL collection received over 17,000 views. We now have over 28,000 digitized titles. And so far this year, we've added 285 to that collection. The top titles last month were our newly digitized Montana Code Annotated, as well as weekly progress reports from field engineering and construction, the Montana State Government Telephone Directory, as well as information such as film production, nursing, travel, outdoors, annual reports, so on and so forth. And the top subjects they line up with those top titles. So we're seeing top subjects from the Montana Highway Department, roads, education, law, labor supply, and even logging. So I found that to be fascinating. Our top authors are Montana Highway Department, Department of Administration, the State Library, Office of the Legislative Auditor, and so forth. And as I mentioned before, at the bottom here, we can see that this was last updated yesterday. So, and then it's updated on a monthly basis as we go forward throughout the fiscal year. I'm going to go back to the main menu here. And I'm going to close this because I just realized it's kind of blocking the view a little bit. There we go. So as you can see here, we have dashboards for many of our programs, including cadastral, MSDI elevation, Natural Heritage Program field guides, library consulting, continuing education, lifelong learning, Montana Memory Project, and the Talking Book Service. We also have a few more dashboards that are in the works and should be coming out in the next week or so. And those are for the Montana Library to Go and Montana Shared Catalog. As mentioned before, it's impossible to be all inclusive, but we do have a tile there for about the library so that our Montana citizens can see the full range of offerings from the state library. The next report I would like to show you is our work plan dashboard. And that's back on that dashboard page. This one may be familiar to you because we tend to link it in your commission materials. We do have a new FY23 work plan dashboard, and I'm going to open that up. So in addition to program trends, we maintain a work plan dashboard that displays our ongoing projects and milestones. So while the other dashboards are about the patterns we're seeing, this is the details about the work that we plan to do throughout the year. So as I mentioned, this is a standing item on your agenda, and it's showing staff progress towards that planned work. Each month, leads provide updates on their projects, including progress towards major milestones. The dashboard also helps visualize areas that might need additional resources and gives insight into how we distribute our work. So starting on the left-hand side here, you can see that 90% of our FY 2023 projects are on schedule. We do see that 6% are delayed. So if you wanted to know more about which projects those are, there's a few different ways that you can go about that. And the first and most easiest is just to hover over the title. And by doing that, we can see that the 5 projects are across 3 different teams. But if we wanted even more detail than that, you can click on the tile, which reveals an option that says view data. And from here, we can add additional fields. So I'm going to add a field for project, and I'm going to add a field for notes. I'm going to drag this just a little bit here. And we'll move our notes. So for example, we can see here that one of the delayed projects is the community-led libraries cohort. And then if we want to know why that was delayed, we can look at the notes. So this project is pending a new Moodle contract. So that's one way that you can get more details about projects if you want to dig in deeper to understand why something might be delayed or deferred. And then the next option is to go across the top here to a new page. And this page is labeled delayed and deferred. And here you can see the entire list of projects that have been labeled delayed or deferred. And you can get that same note information by hovering over the project in the right-hand column. Let's go back to the summary page. As we work down the left-hand side, you can see how our projects are distributed across major work groups and the primary team. So right now, the agency is working on 81 total projects. About 63% of those are associated with user services, which is not surprising. Most of our teams do have a user service component. That's how we're interacting with the public and our vested partners. So if we hover on that, we can see there's 51 total projects that are associated with user services. As we move down, you can see how the projects are distributed by team. These are more equal in size. We do have some larger teams on staff, which is partly why we would see more projects associated with those teams. On the right-hand side, we have milestone details. Milestones are the major tasks that are associated with our various projects. And at this point in the fiscal year, we could see that already we have about 46% of our milestones completed, another 25% on schedule, while another 19% are waiting to be started. And that's visualized in the charts below the tiles. You can see here that we are in fiscal year 2023 Q1, or it's just recently ending. So before that time, we have most of our tasks completed or now marked delayed, but moving forward, you can see that most of those are either not started or on schedule. At the bottom, we have just a few details that are called out. One is tasks that have not been started after a planned start date, tasks that were started but now are exceeding target completion date, and then finally tasks that were completed ahead of schedule. I already showed you delayed and deferred, but we also have pages for completed and on schedule. And each of these pages has a filter on the left-hand panel that you can use to refine the information you're seeing. So you can filter by framework, work group, team, lead, target completion quarter, and so forth. We have a future and conceptual project. So these are these are projects that may not be happening in fiscal year 2023, but we're thinking about them. They're conceptual. They're in either a pre-planning or planning state. And then finally, milestone details. Again, these are the major tasks associated with each project, and they have the same sort of filters and ways of interacting as the projects that I showed earlier. One final option you have for interacting with this information is using this choose a format to download at the very bottom. And if we click on that, you have the option to download this information as a PowerPoint, a PDF, an image, or crosstab, which is my favorite. This is basically just an Excel spreadsheet if you want to filter and play with it in Excel. All right, the next I would like to show you is called the OGSM, and this is brand new to us. The OGSM is basically a condensed view of our work plan. Instead of looking at it at the fiscal year level, we're looking at it in 6-month increments. And OGSM stands for Objectives, Goals, Strategies, and Measures. And the OGSM slide deck is presented by Jenny each month to the governor. So if you click on this here, which we are on the work plan page, it'll bring you to our OGSM frameworks. And so far, we only have one of those published because this process just started in September. But I'll open that up so you can see an idea of what we're working on here. So on the second slide here, we have a list of our goals. This was our first go at it. So in future months, you'll see a much shorter list of goals here. But what we do is we provide our goals for the previous month, the current month, and the upcoming month. We also have the opportunity to present some of our agency highs and some of our agency lows for the month. On the next page, we have that condensed view of our work plan all in one slide. And then finally, we have the lead organization chart, which we update each month to include counts of our total FTE as well as vacancies. All right, one final set of reports I'd like to show you. If you go back to the About the Library page and publications, I am going to talk to you a bit about these story maps we use to present to the Interim Budget Committee. And so I'm just going to open those in 2 different tabs. First, we have COVID-related funding and expenditures and the Interim Budget Committee report. See if I can drag my controls out of the way here. Oops, this is the one I want. The state librarian makes a quarterly report to the Interim Budget Committee, Section E, as established by House Bill 497 to review program implementations discussed or approved during the legislative session. So the MSL 2023 Interim Budget Committee Report includes activities related to Montana's real-time network, House Bill 50, which involves the redistribution of 911 funding to the state library, House Bill 49, which includes the revision of reporting fees to support county and state land information accounts. And then on each quarter, we provide an update. So the most recent of which is September 2022. We have one more IBC update expected in December before the legislative session. MSL also provides a report on our COVID-related funding and expenditures. This report is structured in a very similar way to the previous report. So you can see here that we provide our quarterly updates linked at the top. So this concludes my presentation on some of the reports we use to support data transparency at the state library, and I'm available for questions.
Did you find it? Okay. I have, thank you for that report. That was really insightful. I have a couple of questions under the COVID related funding. I tried you use some of the money to get information into schools. Okay. And I tried to go to that to see what they were, but I couldn't get on because I wasn't a school code. Do you think it has to have a school code or something?
Are you talking about the e-content?
Yes.
Yes, so you would have to be a member of that school to
Right.
go in and look at their
Okay.
digital resources.
Okay.
Mhm.
And is the trails group that you list here it's only for colleges?
That's correct. It's our academic consortium that they provide e-resources and other resources.
Okay, so I noticed they said that they were prioritizing Black history, disabilities, Indigenous students, LGBTQ, and race, class, and gender. So do they pick which material? I mean, who picks that? Is that the trails?
I'll let Jenny speak to the history of that.
That's correct. That is something that's determined by the libraries within the Montana University system that are participating in the Trails Consortium.
Okay, so the trails then answers to the university on the border regions. Okay. And the other question I had was on the news line, which I think it's really a great use of 120,000 to make news available to the public. And my bias is going to show here, which is fine. I will claim it. Under the first news line, you said national newspapers, national news sources, CNN, BBC, and ESPN. Is that right?
So that's including, but I believe they have additional.
Okay,
Yeah.
I couldn't get on to find that, but I just wanted to point out that for cable news, the number one in the country is Fox by 3 times. And actually Fox is 2.1 million viewers a month or a day. MSNBC's 1 and CNN is under their 700,000. So if we were only going to make available to people one of those newses, I wouldn't make it CNN. I think it should be Fox.
This is a service of the National Federation of the Blind, and so
Right.
it's that program that determines what news sources they add.
Right. And that's part of the Information Act. And then, but I'm just saying that information, if they want the news report, then they should be doing that. And then I had a question for you under the sponsorship that we're using to pay for the Montana subscribers of newspapers. Why is Kalispell not there?
So these are provided as an example. I don't think they're intended to be an inclusive list, a fully inclusive list, but I do know that the Montana news are the most popular.
Right, I
content
noticed
type.
that.
Yeah, accessed by the users.
And I thought it was interesting that they listed the Billings Gazette, Bozeman, Great Falls Tribune, Helen Independent, Missoula, and Montana Standard, but not Kalispell. So are you, because they should be there if it's the main 7 newspapers. That seemed like a strange oversight.
And I don't see Marilyn here. She could tell us for certain, but again, these are agreements between the National Federation of the Blind and those newspapers. So I'm not entirely sure how they select which newspapers they include. We're providing funding for the users to have access to that service.
But it's still coming through the Montana State Library. We're still responsible.
We have a memorandum of understanding with the National Federation of the Blind that allows users to subscribe to these papers and to ensure that there's
Right.
news access. And that's really what we fund. It's up to the National Federation of the Blind to determine and create agreements with the news sources to provide access to the various news.
Well,
We aren't responsible for saying which.
Right, but
news
how would we point out to that there are people in Kalispell who are blind
Sure,
and that
we
they are
could
the.
certainly make that recommendation
Yeah.
to the National Federation.
Yeah, I think
of
to
the
just
Blind.
leave Kalispell off the newspaper is a kind of a big drop.
If there's no questions, I just wanted to really commend Rebecca for this fantastic work. And I meant to do this before she started her presentation, just to provide a little background and context for all of this extensive reporting. I hope you agree that it really does a fantastic job of demonstrating the detailed nature of the programs that we offer and the users that we are serving. I know commissioners often ask, who are the users and how are they benefiting? Some of this information is intended to specifically address those questions. And as Rebecca did such a great job to exemplify with the work plan dashboard, for you as commissioners to understand the workload and where our resources are being invested and where we may be advancing and where we are falling behind relative to those resources, I think is it's really critical for you in your role. All of this reporting doesn't just happen. And I think it was about 2016 or so, the State Library Commission and staff were kind of wringing their hands trying to decide how we could better do this kind of reporting, both to demonstrate the impact of our services and to give us the tools and data we needed to feel more confident in how we were investing state library resources. And really, ultimately, what it came down to was needing to make a concerted investment in this work. So we made the decision to hire a full-time data coordinator, and we made decisions to invest in some of the data resources that Rebecca demonstrated, like the Tableau database system and the story maps. And it involves her work, of course, but work of all of the staff, particularly of the leads, to make sure that our data and systems are structured in such a way that we're able to collect this data. You heard Rebecca say several times that we collect this information on a monthly basis. And that means that the leads are going into some of these tracking tools and updating that information. So again, this information is incredibly valuable, but it doesn't just happen. We are making a concerted effort and investment to make sure that we're providing information that we hope is informative to you, that is informative to the public. And we pride ourselves in being transparent in how we're providing this information. So again, I just couldn't be happier with the staff and Rebecca and her efforts.
I was wondering how Rebecca got all the information, but it's like, do you call everyone? Obviously not. So everyone, all the leads report in basically to you, and that's probably one of their many duties.
For the work plan, yes. And then for some of the other products I showed you, like the program dashboards, I work towards automating a lot of that and having connections directly into some of our databases so that can be refreshed on an automatic basis.
I really appreciate that you organize this for us in such a wonderful way. I had a question for Jenny, because Jenny, I reread the CARES thing and it was the funding and expenditures, but is the only CARES money we received what you're talking about here to the blind? Because I didn't see that.
Mm-hmm. No, we received in the previous biennium about $350,000. We received $90,000 in CARES Act funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And then we received about $250,000 in the government's Emergency Education Relief Program. That funding was for the Hotspot program. And then in this current biennium, we have $2.1 million of the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, through the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and then the $120,000 of Newsline funding that is also ARPA dollars.
So what would you say the total CARES money to the library is?
The total pandemic relief money is somewhere between 2.5 and $3 million.
And then do we have a separate out for us on how that's being spent? Is that, did I miss where that's at?
I think in the top of the CARES, the COVID related spending story map is a breakdown of expenditures by program.
Correct. And each quarterly update also includes an update on
Right.
where those funds are.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the report you gave us, the COVID related one with the you're not using other CARES money in general for e-network and whatever. It's only for the blind. I mean, I don't mean only, but that's the only time we use that for that way.
The e-resources funding that we're funding through the ARPA dollars, many of those dollars are supporting some of the pilot programs that Kara described when she was discussing the e-resources policy. We do have other Library Services and Technology Act monies that go to fund additional e-resources.
Yeah, because 3 million is quite a bit. So I was wondering if
Well,
how do we spell out where that is?
Yeah, of that 3 million, and I don't know if we could bring up that story map and that chart.
Well, we could do that next
Yeah,
month.
yeah.
That's fine.
Maybe in December, so we have to expend or maybe let's do it in February. Our ARPA dollars have to be spent by December 31st. So we'll provide a final wrap-up report of how those are spent. But
Okay.
they're funding e-resources, the hotspot program here, you can see kind of a breakout of what they're spending and the sources of those funding. And this is through last fiscal year. So this doesn't include the 2 quarters of this fiscal year.
But you're saying the Newsline part is only for the blind.
The Newsline part is only for the blind, and that's $60,000 each fiscal year. So this was through last fiscal year, and then we spent an additional $60,000 on that agreement with the
Okay.
National Federation of the Blind.
And the
this fiscal year.
e-content is only for the blind.
No, the e-content is for all Montanans. Only
Okay.
the Newsline is for the blind.
Okay.
Rebecca, job well done. I'm always amazed by the reports you're able to bring to us. What a model of government efficiency and ways that agencies could continue to model to be the Montana State Library sets as an example. Can you just share with the commission why it's important for this work to be communicated to the public, that it's coming from the Montana State Library that's doing this?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's important for the public to have access to everything about their government, to understand what we're doing and, to make educated decisions, as well as to know about the breadth of work that we offer at the State Library.
I think you'd have a busy time running through those dashboards every day to explain it. So it's amazing what you can do.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the commission? Thank you.
Good job.
Yes. Especially Dalton, we appreciated.
Melissa?
Yeah.
It is my turn. I would like to give you all an update on our financial compliance audit, which was just finalized and presented last week. So the financial compliance audit for fiscal years 2020 and 2021 was completed.
Melissa, is your mic on?
Not loud enough. I was trying to not. I learned from but it wasn't enough. Okay. The financial compliance audit for fiscal years 2020 and 2021 was completed over the summer, and the final report presented to the Legislative Audit Committee last week on October 5th. The report stated that MSL was issued an unmodified opinion, and the letter from the Director of the Legislative Audit Division states that MSL does not report any significant deficiencies, material weaknesses, or material noncompliance, and that the reader can rely on the information in the schedules. I take great pride in this report and the central services staff that helped support the agency through the last 2 years of significant change, unknowns, and new processes. Of note during this audit period was the transition from being completely reliant on paper processes for invoicing and approvals to an online process that utilizes DocuSign. This change quite literally occurred overnight when staff were sent home during COVID. I am pleased to announce that Central Services is now 100% paperless. Not only does this save countless hours of passing paperwork from person to person for review, but it also saves thousands of tax dollars per year in printing and storage costs. I would like to call out Carol Churchill, who is our accounting tech, for changing how she has processed invoices for 30 years in less than 1 week. I would also like to thank Genevieve, who's here, for spearheading the project to contract with DocuSign. She created workflows and templates that met the needs of MSL in a timely manner. Another impressive achievement during this audit period is the transition of the Montana Natural Heritage Program from the University of Montana to the State Library. Administratively, this was a huge lift, as the program is supported in part by many federal grants and private contracts and is more than $1 million annually. The state's process for adding non-budgeted and budget amendment authority can be lengthy, and tracking these funding streams is complicated. I would like to thank Ashley Kandich in this meeting for taking over the tedious process and making it very successful. Central Services also overhauled the accounting structure for the state library during this audit period. This involved revamping the org structure into work groups and the addition of projects within each of these work groups. The new process allows the state library to report at a more detailed level and adds a significant amount of expenditure transparency to each program. This report does include one recommendation from the auditors that related to incentive pay. While our pay plan policy has historically always included language for these types of payments, the policy that was in place for part of the audit period did not. This was a clerical error, and the language was added back into the pay plan policy approved by the commission and also signed off on by the Department of Administration back in October of 2021. The recommendation from the auditors stated, quote, "We recommend the Montana State Library comply with federal regulations and state policy regarding incentive pay." This matter was resolved in October of 2021 with the adoption of the updated pay plan and prior to the start of the audit. The state library has also verified with audit staff that the current policy does meet the requirements. With all of these changes over the last 2 years, MSL is in a better place financially and administratively than it has been for many years. I am very proud of our staff, and I am pleased to end the audit period with these successes.
I'd like to ask some questions. Jenny, first of all, I appreciate the things that did pass. The thing that didn't pass is very severe. I don't understand you saying it was a result of 2021. I listened last night to the entire legislative audit hearing of Jenny's interview, and I would like to point out that the letter from the Legislative Audit Committee on August 2022 states clearly in the second paragraph, as such, we do not consider the bonus payments to have been made in accordance with the state's pay plan policy, and our recommendation stands. And they actually, legislators and members of the audit committee, question what is this commission going to do in the future to make sure we don't have a portion that fails the state and federal audit. Under the recommendation, again, you read that, but it says, we recommend the Montana State Library comply with federal regulations and state policy regarding employment incentive pay. We did not comply with federal and state law. Now, they asked, again, in this hearing that I listened to last night, what are we going to do as commissioners? They didn't ask Jenny. She said, what is your commission going to do? Because when we fail major, this is the increase we gave all our staff, which is supposed to be according to law based on certain criteria. We just gave it blanket. We did not. The only one on the board then was Dalton. But I'm sure that none of us want in our record that we have violated federal and state audit laws. And so they asked you specifically, what is this commission? Peggy, myself, Elsie, what are we going to do to make sure we don't violate this in the future? So that's what I'd like to know, is what we can do to protect these good people out here from getting a bad name, and also ourselves from being the commission that violates federal and state law.
I'm happy to answer that question. And I think Melissa answered it, and it was also answered during the audit hearing. You'll note the letter from me in the audit report that says that we partially concur with the recommendation. And the reason that we partially concurred with the recommendation was that, as Melissa said, we acknowledged that through an error, we omitted the appropriate language in the pay plan policy that allows for pay incentives. So we acknowledge that mistake. Where we disagree with the auditors is in whether or not we complied with federal CFR. We have written language from federal CFR through the Institute of Museum and Library Services that allows for pay incentives that follow state plans or that are consistent with past practices. And how the state library has awarded pay incentives since before I was state librarian has been very consistent. When we were questioned by the auditors about whether or not the pay incentive met the federal requirements, we contacted our program officer at IMLS, and he provided us concurrence that said that our pay incentive did in fact meet federal requirements. So we disagree that we have not met federal requirements. The auditors posed that question to their federal reporting agencies. And at this point, no one has concurred that what we did was out of compliance with federal.
With the federal, but with the
With
state.
regard to the state, as Melissa said, when the State Library Commission adopted the pay plan policy in October of 2021, that policy includes the appropriate language necessary for us to award these kinds of pay incentives in the future. The auditor, when they met with us, concurred that that language was adequate to prevent this kind of finding in the future. And during the audit hearing, Representative Moore asked the auditor whether or not the changes to our policy would bring the state library into compliance, and the auditor informed him that it would. So should the state library bring recommendations for a pay incentive in the future, the commission can have the confidence that our current policy has the appropriate guidelines to award those pay incentives. And then this policy is a policy that the state library reviews every other year. So you will again see this policy in your probably August or October meeting of next year. I hope that answers your question.
I think I'm clear. I wanted to thank you for writing the letter on behalf of us, because we are the ones who are, the commissioners are the ones whose feet are held to the fire by this failing of this was done after the legislature last time. From what I understood, one of the corrections the state wanted was that you're not allowed to blanket bonus everybody. You have to have an example of a special reason for a bonus pay. And so then is that in the language that we will not blanket give raises like that we're not?
I don't have that language in front of me, but I believe it specifies that there are certain criteria. And whenever the state library recommends to the commission any kind of pay incentive, we always include information about the justifications for why the pay incentive is being recommended. And very typically, it's not just a blanket recommendation that all staff receive the same thing.
Thank you, Jenny. Tammy, I would like to clarify for the record, I was not the only commission present who approved that vote. The vote was also approved by Superintendent Arnson. So please don't tarnish my name.
I'm sorry, she said she voted against it to me, so I'm glad you corrected that.
For any other further discussion? She may have let me correct myself. She may have, but I do not appreciate you calling me out and accusing me of doing a disservice to the staff.
I was making clear that these people on this commission, this was not our responsibility. Elsie voted against this. And there was an error. And I want to protect all of us, including you, Dalton, from making this kind of an error in the future. It's serious.
I'd just like to add one thing before we wrap up here. The language that we're talking about has historically always been included in the state's pay plan policy as well as the state library's pay plan policy. This was a clerical error on this one version, and I'm happy to point you all in the direction of previous forms of the pay plan policy, which do include the language. So I just want to be clear that it's not something, I mean, it's something that we consider, we follow the rules very closely.
Thank you, Melissa.
Are you ready for my report?
We are.
First, I wanted to let you all know that we continue to pursue opportunities for a new home for the State Library. This is something that we've been talking about for more than a year, as the Department of Justice is interested in occupying the space that we currently occupy in the Missouric building. And as you know, we've been homeless now since July 3rd, when our space was impacted by a flood. I am pleased to let you know that the governor's budget office and the Department of Administration and the State Library have reached agreement on a potential new home for the State Library. It's a private leased building near the Capitol campus that's been occupied by previous state agencies. And the governor's budget office is currently negotiating with the current lessee for us to take over that space as a sublessee. Our hope is that we can begin moving in on November 1st. And I look forward to providing you more details about that when those negotiations are complete. But the staff are excited to know that we may actually have a home that may be a permanent home for us. With regard to our Talking Book Services transition, you'll note that there is a dashboard that Rebecca and Marilyn have been working very hard on that will allow you to see some of the continued reporting as we evaluate the impact of our transition from a locally administered talking book program to contracting for some of those services. Of note, there are 92 new users of that service recently. That's about a 30% increase over the number of new patrons relative to this time last year. I have no way to correlate that to the transition to the state of Utah, but it's that kind of information that we are certainly tracking as we talk about the impact of that service. The other thing that you all will remember is that there were 4 staff impacted by the transition to the state of Utah. 2 of those staff now have employment elsewhere. A 3rd is moving out of state, and we're working with the 4th employee and the State Job Services to help her locate additional employment. And when those changes are in place, then we'll be able to go through the process of reclassifying and hiring those outreach positions that we talked about when we made the transition to the state of Utah, redirecting those resources so that we have more ability to attract more patrons to that really valuable service. So I think we're making good progress there. Marilyn had a chance to meet with some of our key vested partners, the Montana Association for the Blind and the National Federation for the Blind, answer their questions and hear their feedback about how this transition has gone for them as well. So I continue to think this is a very smart, very efficient transition that we've made for that particular program. With regard to our executive planning process, you all know that we submitted a number of various budget requests to the governor's budget office, as well as requests for 2 different legislative changes. We anticipate that the governor will release his budget in the middle of November, and we continue to answer questions of the governor's budget office about our specific budgetary requests. I did get confirmation this past Friday that their office is supporting our 2 legislative requests. The first one is the creation of the enterprise fund to collect and expend revenue to support the Montana Real-Time Network. And then the second is the reauthorization of the state aid per capita per square mile to public libraries. That language has been approved with the addition of tribal college libraries as eligible entities, as we talked about, as well as the per capita increase from 40 cents to 50 cents. And so at this point in time, we're working with legislative staff to draft that legislation and to secure legislative sponsors to carry those two pieces of legislation forward. And fingers crossed that we'll have happy news to report about some of our budget requests in the next meeting as well. Just a couple of other quick updates. I wanted to let you know that just yesterday, we signed a memorandum of agreement with the Montana State Historical Society with regard to the funding that we're providing for their sensory trail. That was funding approved by the commission in April. So a couple of things that the commission wanted to be assured of. Under the memorandum of agreement, the Historical Society has agreed to maintain the trail for a minimum period of 40 years and to ensure that the state library is named as a named donor for that trail for that same period. And the state library also, or I'm sorry, the Historical Society also plans to provide regular reporting back to the commission as that sensory trail is developed. So I'm excited to make progress on that effort, as you can see the building going up. And then I just wanted to make sure that you took note of some of the partner feedback, in particular, some great feedback about how people in Montana are using the hotspot program and the impact that that's having. And then some of our first feedback that we've received about our real-time network from some surveyors out in eastern Montana, reporting that the real-time network served them very well in their particular efforts. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, librarian. Moving forward, excuse me, are there any questions from the commission?
Jenny, can I get the total budget? It's kind of broken out and I appreciate that. How much is the total budget for the library? And that probably does or doesn't consider the CARES.
I should know that off the top of my head. I want to say it's 6 or 7 million.
That's correct. And Tammy, all of those documents are available online.
Right, but I would like to know, so is it 6, what is it, the budget?
It depends on if you're asking about House Bill 2 funding or all of our funding.
All
So
of the funding,
all of our funding, including COVID this year, is closer to 7.
okay, 7 with COVID. Otherwise, it's 6 million something,
Well,
because the COVID was 3 million.
that's a more complicated question than I
Okay.
think you're asking, because a lot of the funding we have doesn't expire in this fiscal year, so it's not really appropriate to think of it as like the size of our ongoing budget. So the answer to your question is, this year we have the ability to spend $7 million.
Okay.
Much of that we will not, because it is continuing funding.
And then how many total libraries, Jenny? You were
Public
saying-
libraries, there are
Yeah.
82 main public libraries, about 116 if you count their branches.
Yeah, and can I ask what, because that's what I had down to was 116. And then the one lady made the comment, but one that's not official or something, I couldn't remember her wording, but they're working on it. These are all libraries that have qualified as what? What was, she made, and she said we have one library in our, yeah, Tracy, she said one library that's not.
Yeah, so you heard a couple of different
Yeah.
federation coordinators report that there may be a library in their federation that don't qualify for funding because they're not meeting the standards. And then one federation that reported that a library that previously hadn't met the standards now meet those standards and do qualify for funding.
But the 116 are standard approved.
That includes all libraries, whether or not they meet the standards or not.
But yeah, so there's only 3 or 4 that haven't. That's pretty impressive.
Right now, I think we're at about 2. Yep, 2.
That's phenomenal.
Mhm.
Yay.
Are there any other questions for Jenny? Hearing no other questions, we'll move forward to commission goals and objectives. The first item on discussion is the state librarian evaluation update. I will provide just a quick overview. The subcommittee has met once since our last meeting. We are still working with gaining access to the state's portal using the system called Talent. Once we have access to that tool, we will begin moving forward with the state librarian performance evaluation. Next, the calendar review.
Is there a timeline for the evaluation? Fair to Jenny? I mean, are you guys, what's your goal?
Tammy, thanks for the clarifying question. We would like to have a performance evaluation completed by the December meeting.
Oh, great. Okay.
So a couple of things I wanted to bring up as we look at your particular calendar. It's great that so many of you have been able to attend the Fall Federation meetings. I want to ask Tracy to make sure that as those future Federation meetings come up, that we're emailing you the date and time and the Zoom links so that you're able to attend. I know how much the librarians appreciate it, and the discussion that we had earlier today tells me how positive those interactions are and how informative they've been for the commission. I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about your December 8th retreat planning and the goals for the agenda. We are under contract with Dan Clark to continue the training that was started in August. And I know Peggy wants to talk a little bit more about that. Before we have that discussion, I did want to get a thumbs up for the commission. We received word this week that the Montana Library Association is seeking program proposals for their spring conference, which will be in Billings in April. This is typically the point in time when I submit a program proposal for the Conversations with Commission that you all participated in August in Missoula. So I'm looking for a thumbs up from you regarding whether or not you would want me to submit that program proposal for possible inclusion in that April conference.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Okay, great. I'll get that submitted. So Peggy, do you want to talk a little bit about the time with Dan?
I will. I believe we had a short session in August, and afterwards I went. To me, as a new commissioner, and I have limited board experience. I'm on one foundation board for a hospital, and I've watched a lot of school boards, but I do know that they get training when you become on a school board or such. And as I was just elected vice chair, I would greatly appreciate more training, a little bit more, as today showed with the Roberts rules. My head was spinning as we were changing all that. So I think it will be a good opportunity for us to come together as a board and learn together.
Fully support. Is there any other conversation or discussion from members of the commission?
Is the budget, I asked the budget question about that. What, is there a training budget for us, or are we pulling out from somebody else?
You do have a budget, and I think we looked at the additional expenses. It would be per diem and an extra night for the commission to stay here in Helena. And then the cost of the training, we're estimating a total cost of about $2,300 that would come out of the State Library Commission's budget. I think that's about a $16,000 budget overall. So there's plenty of room in your budget.
There's room in our budget, because I wouldn't want to. And then I did express to Dalton and Jenny, I have a little bit of concern about our meeting being on December 7th, because that's the subcommittee budget hearing with the legislature for the education. So we're sort of guaranteeing, and at this point, we only have 6 members, that Elsie cannot be here, and I'm uncomfortable doing that. She said she'll do what we do, but it's fine. But I just think when there's only 6 members and she is assigned to the budget interim committee that day, I hate to have our meeting without her here, and I wondered if we should try to change it to 9. So we have the, plus it might make us more productive if we have the retreat first. It would help me, I know. And I do apologize, Dalton, if you felt singled out. I know how that feels all day. So thank you. I I would just like to suggest maybe the 9th. I know we have to publicly admit it today, but if that would help Delcy, I don't know if we have a room lined up. Maybe it's not possible, but
Genevieve, can you let us know, do we have a room reserved for the meeting on the 7th? Are there any other implications if the commission would vote to change our meeting on this from the 7th to the 9th that I'm not thinking about?
Give me one sec. No, I can only ask 2 months in advance, so I'll ask really soon, but yeah.
Could we send this out as a follow-up poll?
would, we have to publish it certain amount of time in advance,
2
correct?
weeks in advance.
2 weeks is enough. Okay. How do you feel, Peg?
Does anybody else have any conflicts if we were to move to the 9th rather than the 7th? That would allow us to
No
keep
weddings?
our.
I'd have to get access to my work calendar.
Is it what day of the week is it? Bachelorette party? Well, you're not going.
I'm babysitting.
Oh. Bring them.
But that's okay. I could be here. Just. These are home afterwards.
What do you think?
Take follow-up poll. I thought that was a good idea. So we're not all put on the spot. Because
Yeah, 'cause I
Elsie
haven't-
may have a commitment on the 9th.
Yeah, she made too. I asked her and she said she'd honor what we did, but. Okay,
I can send out a poll too, if that's easier for people and yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I have just one more business announcement. We had intended to offer a training after the adjournment on how to set up your email. We are working on setting up state email addresses for all of you, but because of the state security requirements, it involves setting you up as what's called contingent workers within the state human resources system. And we're still going through that process of making that happen. And we felt like the training would be most beneficial to you as you actually can apply the learning by downloading some of the security apps and learning how to access the web portals. So if we have that training or that service available sooner, I may look to schedule a webinar with all of you to train you on how to use that service. Otherwise, we'll look at doing it at your December meeting.
Thanks, Jenny.
And I see Sharon, she sent a email to me with the basic information she needed because I was having trouble with the PDF. So
Okay.
I think we've gotten that, and so we can move this forward.
Yeah.
could you get on? Yeah, I couldn't either. I couldn't.
Is there any other business or announcements not on today's agenda? Since this meeting is a public meeting, I would like to call for public comment on any matter not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Montana State Library. Written public comment can be sent to Genevieve to give everyone a chance to comment. Please limit your comment to 3 minutes. Is there any public comment?
No comments.
I'd like to again thank the staff and all of the librarians who drove today to present to us. And thank you for bearing with me during my first opportunity as chair of the Montana State Library Commission. Hearing no further discussion, may I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
This meeting is adjourned.